One of them was a devout follower of Buddhist teachings, while the other subscribed to Taoist mantras, so they naturally had conflicting viewpoints. As for Han Li, he was leaning more toward Master Black Rain's perspective. 1. All those who embarked on the journey of cultivation should focus entirely on attaining the ultimate objective of immortality. In comparison, everything else really did pale in insignificance. After that, Han Li slowly closed his eyes and entered a meditative state. As for Buddhist Master Tian Chan and Master Black Rain, their debate naturally wasn't going to lead to any definitive outcome, so they eventually fell silent and began to meditate as well. Time slowly passed by, and 3 days and 3 nights flew by in a flash, but the yellow mist within the giant crater still hadn't displayed any changes. On this day, Han Li opened his eyes and casually swept his spiritual sense toward the bottom of the giant crater, upon which his brows furrowed slightly. How long has it been since the two of you have arrived here? Could it be that the date of the Pipe Dream Stone Spirit's tribulation transcendence has been misjudged? Rest assured, fellow Taoist Han, the mighty figures on the Holy Island are renowned for their accurate divination. Buddhist Master Tian Chan and I only arrived around half a month before you, and according to the result of the divination, the stone spirit will be transcending its tribulation during this month, so the time will definitely come soon, Master Black Rain said in a calm manner. I see. It seems I was being too impatient. All of a sudden, Han Li's expression changed slightly, and all 3 of them turned toward the giant crater down below in unison with serious expressions. The yellow mist at the bottom of the crater had suddenly begun to churn violently, and a burst of glacial aura that was far more powerful than before began to emanate from it, creating a layer of yellow ice over the bottom half of the crater. All of a sudden, a resounding boom rang out overhead, and Han Li hurriedly cast his gaze upward to discover that a series of inky black clouds were quickly converging from all directions. At the same time, bursts of dull rumbling could be heard coming from within the clouds, and it seemed that countless bolts of lightning were taking shape. Haha, the stone spirit's heavenly tribulation has arrived. It won't be long before it emerges from the earthly hellish flames now. Buddhist Master Tian Chan, let's begin, Master Black Rain said in an elated manner before rising up into the air as a ball of black light. Buddhist Master Tian Chan was also ecstatic as he flew up into the air as well. Immediately thereafter, the 2 of them began to chant in unison as they released one formation flag and formation plate after another. These formation treasures quickly filled the entire air above the giant crater, then vanished in a flash. An extremely powerful formation had been set up by the 2 of them in the blink of an eye, and the power of the restriction had spread over every single inch of the mountain summit. Right at this moment, Master Black Rain withdrew his hand seals and rotated on the spot, upon which countless black specks of light erupted from his body. These specks of light then self-detonated and vanished into countless black threads. Meanwhile, Buddhist Master Tian Chan let loose a low cry, then flipped a hand over to produce a fiery red bowl, from within which emerged 3 balls of crimson flames amid a clear phoenix cry. Each fireball was only around the size of a human head, but they instantly swelled to over 100 feet in size each at Buddhist Master Tian Chan's behest, then transformed into 3 giant crimson fiery birds. Letter 1D4 1F, letter 1D563, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D556, letter 1D568, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D5F0, letter 1D698, letter 1D46. Han Li drew a sharp breath upon seeing the 3 birds, and he exclaimed, "Fire phoenixes!" These are merely flamebirds that possess faint traces of the fire phoenix bloodline. They can't even begin to compare with a true fire phoenix. The stone spirit had been residing in the earthly hellish flames for tens of thousands of years, so it should have already attained an extreme yin constitution. As such, the powers of these 3 flamebirds should be very effective against it, Buddhist Master Tian Chan explained with a smile. Even so, Han Li still found the 3 birds to be quite remarkable. I see. The flamebirds truly bear a startling resemblance to the fire phoenix. If it weren't for their slightly inferior auras, it would be quite difficult to distinguish one from the other. After releasing the countless specks of black light, Master Black Rain suddenly opened his mouth to expel a miniature purple gourd. The gourd was only several inches in size, and its surface was flashing with specks of mysterious silver light. A blue crystalline scorpion then sprang out of the gourd. The scorpion was only around a foot in size, but it was extremely intricate in appearance and had a pair of semi-transparent wings on its back. After that, Buddhist Master Tian Chan and Master Tian Chan cast a series of incantation seals toward these spirit beasts to conceal their bodies and auras. At this point, the dark clouds up above had already completely concealed the entire sky, and if it weren't for the occasional flash of silver lightning, one could be forgiven for thinking that night had suddenly arrived. Brother Han will have to leave this mountain for now. Buddhist Master Tian Chan and I will use a treasure to erase the residual aura we've left behind here, Master Black Rain said in an apologetic manner. Of course, all spirit items possess astonishing senses. If we don't take the necessary precautions, there's no way we'll be able to fool it. Thus, Han Li rose to his feet and vanished on the spot as a plume of azure smoke. In the next instant, spatial fluctuations erupted in the distance, and Han Li re-emerged before crossing his arms as he hovered in midair. Buddhist Master Tian Chan and Master Black Rain exchanged a glance before one of them flipped a hand over to produce a translucent bead amid a flash of white light. The bead was giving off remarkable glacial power, and as soon as it emerged, Master Black Rain swept a sleeve through the air to release a ball of azure light, which then revealed itself to be an azure fan. Buddhist Master Tian Chan gently waved the bead through the air, and a flurry of 5 colored runes revolved within the bead as it released a burst of white glacial chi. Master Black Rain also pointed a finger toward the azure fan, and the treasure waved itself through the air several times at his behest. Gusts of fierce azure wind swept out of the fan, then formed a fierce hurricane that intertwined with the glacial power. A snowstorm instantly swept over the mountain summit, and everything was covered under a blanket of ice and snow. Buddhist Master Tian Chan and Master Black Rain then exchanged another glance, and they also departed from the mountain just as Han Li had a moment ago. The residual auras left behind by the trio were then instantly dispersed by the fierce snowstorm. Prepare that thing now. Judging from the overhead conditions, the pipe dream stone spirit is most likely going to emerge soon, Buddhist Master Tian Chan said as he looked up at the sky through narrowed eyes. Master Black Rain chuckled in response before rubbing his hands over, and a silver net abruptly appeared amid a flash of silver light. Go, Master Black Rain yelled as he released the silver net, and it transformed into a vast expanse of silver mist that instantly enshrouded the entire mountain down below. After that, he made a hand seal, and the mist quickly began to fade before vanishing into thin air. With this silver celestial lightning net, there's no way the stone spirit will be able to escape through an aerial route. What's even more remarkable about this net is that it won't have any impact on the lightning tribulation up above, so the pipe dream stone spirit definitely won't be able to sense it. Buddhist Master Tian Chan chuckled as he rubbed his hands together. This net is ranked quite highly even on the chaotic myriad spirit roll. If it weren't for the fact that this is an extremely important mission, the Holy Island wouldn't have allowed me to take it out of the island. Now that we've sealed off all aerial routes of escape, we have to prevent the stone spirit from being able to escape back into the earthly hellish flames as well. Once the stone spirit becomes feeble from transcending its tribulation, we'll immediately activate the restriction to cut it off. However, the formation alone may not be enough to stop it, so we'll be counting on you to prevent it from escaping, Brother Han. Oh, and don't forget to look out for the stone spirit's illusionary abilities, Master Black Rain said in a solemn manner. Rest assured, fellow Taoists, I'll do everything in my power to make sure it doesn't escape. Han Li's spiritual sense was no less powerful than that of a grand ascension stage being, so he was naturally very confident. Master Black Rain was still a little uneasy, but he couldn't say anything further after witnessing Han Li's confident display. In that case, there shouldn't be any issues. Buddhist Master Tian Chan and I will take care of capturing the stone spirit. Thus, after a brief discussion, all three of them unleashed concealment techniques and went into hiding. The only sound that lingered over the mountain stemmed from the fierce snowstorm, and that also subsided after a short while. An icy white blanket had draped over the entire mountain, and at the same time, the black clouds up above had begun to slowly revolve to form a massive black vortex. There were countless arcs of silver lightning converging within the vortex, and they gradually combined to form an extremely thick bolt of lightning. At the same time, the rumbling thunderclaps up above suddenly subsided, and deathly silence ensued, but an astonishing sense of pressure had filled the entire surrounding space. Meanwhile, the yellow mist within the giant crater had also formed a small vortex, and the center of the vortex was completely pitch black. However, there were wisps of white chi emerging from within it, and it was as if a ghost or spirit could spring out at any moment. Immortal Galaxy Tree. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for a chance at immortality. Time passed by slowly, and around an hour later, the pressure in the air had mounted to such an extent that the layer of ice that had just taken shape on the mountain was beginning to crack and groan. A resounding boom rang out from the vortex in the sky, and a bolt of lightning that was as thick as a water tank came crashing down out of its center. The bolt of lightning struck the other vortex within the giant crater in a flash, leaving a scorching trail in its wake. The bolt of silver lightning vanished in a flash, and the mist around the vortex churned violently, following which a low roar of agony rang out from within. Immediately thereafter, a thunderous roar erupted from beneath the ground alongside a burst of astonishing energy fluctuations. The entire mountain began to tremor, and countless cracks appeared on the surface of the layer of ice as it began to shatter. Right at this moment, silver light flickered within the black vortex up above, and another thick pillar of silver lightning took shape before crashing down with devastating might. Right as this bolt of lightning was about to strike the giant crater as well, an enraged roar rang out from down below, and a burst of yellow flames erupted from within the mist. The silver lightning and yellow flames intertwined, and the flames seemed to be burning ferociously, but they were giving off an astonishing bone-chilling sensation. At the same time, projections of ghostly faces were appearing around it, creating a very harrowing sight to behold. A dull thump rang out, and the silver lightning and yellow flames disappeared in unison. Are those earthly hellish flames? No, such a small amount of earthly hellish flames shouldn't be this powerful, Han Li murmured to himself as his eyes narrowed slightly. Meanwhile, Buddhist Master Tian Chan was clicking his tongue with wonder. As expected of a spirit item that's been cultivating in the earthly hellish flames for tens of thousands of years, the Pipe Dream Stone Spirit has integrated the earthly hellish flames with its demonic chi to form an extremely powerful ability. You'll have to watch out for these demonic flames, Benefactor Han. Han Li's heart stirred upon hearing this, and he replied, "Thank you for the words of caution, fellow Taoist. I'll be sure to be on my guard." One bolt of lightning after another came crashing down from above, and the lightning strikes were increasing in frequency. However, the yellow demonic flames rising up from the bottom of the crater were able to keep up, and all of the bolts of lightning were kept at bay. However, the resistance posed by the yellow flames had clearly enraged a certain omnipotent being, and the lightning strikes suddenly ceased. In the next instant, a burst of rumbling rang out from within the vortex, and a series of head-sized balls of silver lightning emerged. The balls of lightning were crackling incessantly within the dark clouds, and there were too many of them to count. In the face of such a threatening phenomenon, the stone spirit down below was naturally unable to continue hiding in the yellow mist any longer. A strange cry rang out, and the yellow mist surged, following which an object that was around a foot in size shot forth from the bottom of the crater. After just a single flash, it had reached an altitude of over 1,000 feet, and it hovered in midair while staring up at the balls of lightning with wariness in its eyes. Han Li focused his gaze on the object to find that it had a remarkably large mouth, 4 thin and long limbs, and a short and stubby neck that was virtually indistinguishable from the rest of its body. It bore a strong resemblance to a toad. However, there was a crimson eye at the center of its head, and its entire body was shimmering with golden light. On top of that, its 4 limbs were also tipped with sharp claws rather than flippers as one would expect of a toad. So that's the Pipe Dream Stone Spirit. It sure has a peculiar appearance. Han Li was very intrigued. In the instant that the stone spirit emerged, all of the balls of lightning came crashing down in unison, as if they had been provoked. The entire mountain was instantly illuminated by scintillating silver light, and the balls of lightning were raining down from above like hailstones. In response, the Pipe Dream Stone Spirit immediately opened its mouth to expel a small yellow flower. The flower was shimmering with yellow light and was covered in 5 colored runes, and it swelled drastically to around 10 feet in size to shield the stone spirit's body. It was quite clear just from a single glance that this giant flower was no ordinary item. In the instant that the giant flower was summoned, a dozen or so balls of lightning crashed down onto it in rapid succession. The flower rotated slowly on the spot, and the 5 colored runes on its surface lit up, upon which all of the balls of lightning vanished silently into the flower like sandcastles in the rising tide. What was even more astonishing was that, with each wave of lightning orbs that the flower devoured, its flower petals would noticeably expand, and after over 10 waves, the flower had swelled to around twice its original size. As a result, the rate at which the giant flower was absorbing balls of lightning also increased drastically, and not long after that, All of the balls of lightning had disappeared into the flower. The pipe dream stone spirit beneath the giant flower remained completely unscathed, and it let loose a clear cry of elation at the sight of the giant flower's current state. The stone spirit's belly deflated before it abruptly inhaled with all its might, and the giant flower was drawn back into its stomach as a ball of light. Lightning flashed from the stone spirit's body, and a dozen or so thick bolts of silver lightning erupted forth, then formed a silver lightning net around it. The stone spirit swelled drastically in size amid the lightning, and within the span of just a few breaths, it had expanded to the size of a cow-calf. At the same time, its aura had also become a lot more powerful, and its powers seemed to have been significantly enhanced. A thunderclap rang out from within the black vortex up above again, and countless silver snakes were dancing erratically within it. There were also a dozen or so silver lightning worms that were visible from the outside, and seemed to be about to erupt out of the vortex at any moment. This is rather troublesome. This pipe dream stone spirit has the ability to convert heavenly lightning into power for itself. At this rate, it's only going to become more and more powerful, rather than be weakened by this lightning tribulation. In that case, now would be the best time to strike. Fellow Taoist Han, Buddhist Master Tian Chan, let's do it. Master Black Rain suddenly transmitted his voice to his two companions, and his frustration was quite apparent. Han Li naturally didn't offer any objections and transmitted his voice in an affirmative reply. Buddhist Master Tian Chan also nodded with a grim look on his face. Right at this moment, the dozen or so lightning worms in the black clouds above finally came crashing down. Go! Master Black Rain immediately sprang into action upon seeing this. He quickly made a hand seal and immediately disappeared on the spot as a plume of black smoke. In the next instant, spatial fluctuations erupted in the air over 10,000 feet above the mountain summit, and Master Black Rain re-emerged, then abruptly raised a hand with a fierce look on his face. A ball of silver light shot forth before transforming into a giant silver bell that was over 100 feet tall. The giant bell descended viciously toward the stone spirit, and at the same time, countless black threads erupted out of thin air around the small mountain before hurtling toward the stone spirit in unison. A white lotus flower also appeared behind the pipe dream stone spirit, and white light flashed from the flower, upon which a faint humanoid figure emerged. It was none other than Buddhist Master Tian Chan. Buddhist Master Tian Chan had his head lowered slightly, and his face was completely expressionless. A string of translucent Buddhist beads flew out of his sleeve, then transformed into several tens of five-colored balls of light that shot forth through the air. Even before these balls of light had struck the stone spirit, the sound of howling wind and rumbling thunder could be heard erupting from them. At the same time, they swelled drastically and reached the size of human heads in the blink of an eye. The pipe dream stone spirit was initially rather startled by this abrupt string of attacks, then let loose a sharp cry of fury. It opened its mouth to expel the giant yellow flower again, which positioned itself directly beneath the descending giant silver bell. Immediately thereafter, its body blurred slightly as it began to revolve on the spot. Golden light flashed, and countless streaks of golden light erupted from its body before hurtling through the surrounding air in all directions. Golden light and black threads intertwined as a string of piercing explosions rang out, and countless balls of light emerged around the stone spirit to illuminate the entire mountain. The black threads were unable to inch any closer to the stone spirit, nor were the five-colored balls of light and streaks of golden light. Meanwhile, the silver bell clashed with the giant flower, and the former shuddered as a string of crisp bell chimes rang out. Each chime was louder than the previous one, and the sound traveled deep into the listener's soul. A peculiar turn of events then unfolded. Following the passage of the third bell chime, the giant yellow flower suddenly shattered without any warning and vanished as countless specks of spiritual light. The silver bell then blurred before expanding by severalfold in size again, then crashed down onto the pipe dream stone spirit like a small mountain, sealing the stone spirit securely within it. Master Black Rain and Buddhist Master Tian Chan both faltered slightly upon seeing this before elated looks appeared on their faces, and they withdrew their hand seals. Letter 1D68F, letter 1D42B, letter 1D68T, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D568, letter 1D41E, letter 1D554, letter 1D428, letter 1D5FA. At this moment, the dozen or so silver lightning worms had already crashed down from above, but as soon as they approached the mountain summit, a giant silver net that encompassed the entire mountain emerged. All of the lightning worms that struck the net immediately exploded, before being absorbed by the net as countless wisps of lightning. As expected of a renowned spirit treasure on the chaotic myriad spirit roll, the silver celestial lightning net that Master Black Rain had set up in advance was able to keep even heavenly lightning at bay. Master Black Rain began to chant something while flicking his fingers, and a dozen or so incantation seals vanished into the giant bell in a flash. The silver bell tolled, and the spiritual light on its surface flashed erratically as Master Black Rain prepared to stow it away. However, during this split-second delay, an earth-shattering boom suddenly erupted from within the silver bell, and it was blown up into the air by a burst of glacial fluctuations. Immediately thereafter, violent yellow flames emerged, and a ball of golden light shot forth like a shooting star before immediately fleeing toward the giant crater down below. The pipe dream stone spirit seemed to have realized how powerful its enemies were, and was escaping from the battle. Master Black Rain and Buddhist Master Tian Chan naturally weren't going to allow the stone spirit to get away so easily. Master Black Rain immediately made a hand seal, and a burst of silver sound waves erupted from the giant silver bell before sweeping downward in a violent manner. Meanwhile, Buddhist Master Tian Chan flipped a hand over to produce a pristine white formation plate amid a flash of spiritual light. He pointed his finger rapidly at the formation plate a few times, and countless light formations suddenly emerged near the giant crater amid a rumbling boom. Bursts of restriction fluctuations immediately surged forth in a frenzy, instantly forming a huge net that barred the stone spirit from being able to make its retreat. On top of that, the cry of a phoenix rang out in the air above the restrictions, and 3 balls of crimson flames flashed as 3 fiery birds emerged. The 3 crimson birds then immediately opened their beaks and blasted forth 3 pillars of crimson flames up into the air. The flames instantly formed a fiery cloud that swept toward the stone spirit from one side. On the other side, that translucent flying scorpion had also appeared out of thin air. Its blue tail lashed out, a streak of poisonous blue light shot forth out of its stingers. Thus, the pipe dream stone spirit was plunged into a perilous situation again in the blink of an eye. The stone spirit seemed to have been completely enraged by this, and golden light revolved around its body as it abruptly let loose a sharp cry. The 3rd crimson eye on its forehead then immediately widened, and a burst of scintillating white light appeared within it. The light was so bright and piercing that even Master Black Rain and Buddhist Master Tian Chan were forced to close their eyes, and when they reopened their eyes, their expressions changed drastically. They discovered that they were situated within a world of yellow flames. The flames appeared to be scorching hot, but gave off a bone-chilling sensation instead. Earthly hellish flames. No, this is an illusionary technique. Master Black Rain immediately identified this to be an illusion, but his expression didn't ease in the slightest. Prior to setting off, he had heard that pipe dream stone spirits' innate illusionary techniques were extremely profound and could trap even body integration stage beings. However, never did he think that it would be capable of unleashing such a powerful illusionary technique without any warning. On top of that, the illusion that was being manifested was of these extremely troublesome earthly hellish flames. This stone spirit had been residing in the earthly hellish flames for countless years, and it had honed its illusionary techniques to an extraordinary level. It definitely wouldn't be an easy task to break out of this illusion. Time was of the essence here, so they had no choice but to break out through the use of brute force. With that in mind, Master Black Rain immediately released several small black shields to protect himself. Meanwhile, the Buddhist Master Tian Chan opened his eyes to find himself situated in a murky gray space. Master Black Rain and the other spirit beasts were nowhere to be seen. There was only a gigantic creature that was over 10,000 feet tall hovering several thousand feet away from him. This was a shimmering golden creature that resembled a colossal toad, but it had a row of 7 golden eyes that stretched from its head all the way down its back. The 7 eyes were all appraising Buddhist Master Tian Chan in a completely expressionless manner, and the formidable aura that the gargantuan creature was giving off struck one with a sense of asphyxiation. 7-eyed gold toad. Buddhist Master Tian Chan's expression changed drastically upon seeing this. However, he then uttered a Buddhist prayer, and a determined look reappeared on his face. He made a grabbing motion with both hands, and spiritual light flashed as a golden Buddhist staff and a silver bowl emerged at the same time. Not only were Master Black Rain and Buddhist Master Tian Chan standing completely still in midair, the 3 fiery birds had also ceased expelling the crimson pillars of flames. They were currently flapping their wings violently on the spot with panicked looks on their faces, clearly having been trapped into illusions of their own. Only the translucent flying scorpion was somehow able to remain completely unaffected by the stone spirit's illusionary technique, and it was still releasing a streak of blue light out of its stinger. However, it was no match for the pipe dream stone spirit on its own, and the stone spirit expelled a burst of demonic flames to ward off these streaks of blue light with ease. It then aimed a vicious glare at the scorpion before crashing down toward the restrictions down below as a ball of golden light. The stone spirit seemed to be quite intelligent and knew that its top priority was to escape into the giant crater, rather than waste time battling its assailants. As it was flying down from above, it abruptly opened its mouth to release a series of head-sized balls of yellow light. The balls of yellow light struck a certain part of the restrictions in a flash, and a string of loud booms rang out. The balls of yellow light exploded in rapid succession, and the restriction began to waver and display signs of collapsing. The stone spirit was elated to see this, and it opened its mouth to expel another string of balls of light to land the final blow on the restrictions. However, right at this moment, a humanoid figure suddenly emerged in the air above the restrictions, and an azure-robed young man appeared amid a flash of azure light. The young man looked up at the pipe dream stone spirit with a faint smile, then swept a sleeve through the air to release a silver ruler. The ruler blurred before conjuring up countless ruler projections, which swept through all of the descending balls of light. This young man was naturally none other than Han Li. The pipe dream stone spirit had focused its illusionary technique primarily on Master Black Rain and Buddhist Master Tian Chan. As such, even though Han Li had also been affected somewhat from afar, he was able to easily break out of the illusion with his immense spiritual sense, then arrived above the restrictions just in the nick of time. The stone spirit became even more furious at the sight of this new enemy. Yellow flames suddenly erupted from its body, and the flames were sent sweeping toward Han Li in a frenzy. These flames were none other than the glacial yin demonic flames that it had only attained after cultivating underground for tens of thousands of years. As opposed to being alarmed by these oncoming flames, he merely chuckled and flipped a hand over to produce a small black mountain. He laid a hand onto the mountain, and it instantly swelled to over 100 feet in size. A row of silver runes appeared on the mountain at Han Li's behest, following which a vast expanse of gray light swept forth before forming a gray vortex in midair. As soon as the yellow demonic flames came into contact with the gray vortex, a rumbling boom akin to a thunderclap erupted, and the flames were all drawn into the vortex. As a result, the gray vortex expanded slightly, but didn't display any other reaction. The pipe dream stone spirit let loose a sharp cry upon seeing this, and an earth-shattering boom abruptly erupted from within the gray vortex. The vortex tremored violently before shattering, and the yellow demonic flames with it sprang forth before transforming into a yellow fiery toad that pounced directly toward Han Li. Even before the fiery toad had reached Han Li, he was struck by a burst of glacial power that threatened to freeze even his soul. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this. The demonic flames were indeed rather troublesome to deal with, but he naturally wasn't going to be fearful of it. He reached out and made a grabbing motion toward the fiery toad, upon which a huge white hand with 5 colored glacial flames burning around it emerged. The giant hand then shot forth toward the fiery toad like lightning, and perhaps the fiery toad knew that it wouldn't be able to evade the hand or simply had no intention of taking evasive measures. In any case, it jumped straight into the massive hand, upon which the fingers of the hand closed tightly around it while 5 colored glacial flames swelled drastically. A dull thump rang out as the fiery toad instantly exploded, reverting back into a wave of fire that swept toward the huge hand. However, the 5 colored glacial flames were also a type of glacial flames, so it was able to hold its own against the yellow demonic flames. Right at this moment, Han Li pointed a finger toward the black mountain before him, and it abruptly vanished into thin air. In the next instant, spatial fluctuations erupted in the air above the pipe dream stone spirit, and the black mountain re-emerged before crashing down alongside a wave of gray light. A burst of enormous invisible force immediately weighed down upon the stone spirit, making its body very slow and sluggish. It was naturally extremely enraged and alarmed by this, and after struggling a few times to no avail, it immediately opened its mouth to expel a yellow bead. This completely mundane-looking yellow thumb-sized bead was none other than the stone spirit's demon core. The demon core circled around above the stone spirit, and the burst of tremendous force weighing down upon it was forcibly repelled. At the same time, Countless yellow fiery snakes erupted out of the demon core before quickly swelling to several tens of feet in length each. The fiery yellow snakes swept upward to intertwine with the gray light, and the black mountain was forcibly kept at bay. A cold light flashed through Han Li's eyes upon seeing this, and he immediately made a hand seal, upon which a pair of translucent wings appeared on his back amid a dull thunderclap. He flapped the wings and abruptly vanished on the spot as an arc of silver lightning. Meanwhile, the stone spirit had just evaded a streak of blue light unleashed by the flying scorpion, and a fierce look appeared on its face as it prepared to unleash an attack in retaliation. However, lightning suddenly flashed behind it, following which Han Li abruptly re-emerged. The pipe dream stone spirit was quite startled by this, and its third demonic eye widened as it prepared to release that scintillating white light again. However, Han Li was already prepared for this. He harumphed coldly as he closed his eyes, and his law-destruction eye appeared on his glabella amid a flash of black light. A black thread shot forth out of the law-destruction eye and struck the stone spirit's third demonic eye in a flash, scattering the white light that had just begun to gather. Furthermore, in the instant that the stone spirit heard Han Li's cold harumph, it felt as if a thunderclap had erupted right inside its head, and a sudden burst of excruciating spiritual pain made it sway unsteadily in midair. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Han Li immediately rubbed his hands together before raising them up into the air. A loud thunderclap rang out, and countless arcs of golden lightning sprang forth before forming a giant lightning net. The net descended over the stone spirit before abruptly contracting, and by the time the stone spirit recovered from the effects of Han Li's spirit-stunned thorn, it had already been trapped tightly within a net of golden lightning. It was naturally unwilling to be captured, and yellow demonic flames erupted out of its body again as it let loose a sharp cry. The divine devilbane lightning began to melt away in the face of the yellow flames, and it seemed that the stone spirit was about to escape. However, Han Li naturally wasn't going to allow it to get away. A cold smile appeared on his face, yet just as he was about to unleash another attack, Master Black Rain's urgent voice suddenly sounded beside his ears. "Please wait, fellow Taoist Han. My spirit insect will be enough to subdue the stone spirit." Han Li faltered slightly upon hearing this, and Master Black Rain suddenly let loose a long cry. Almost at the exact same moment, the flying scorpion blurred before conjuring up a dozen or so identical projections of itself. These flying scorpions flapped their wings and vanished on the spot as balls of blue light. In the next instant, spatial fluctuations erupted, and the flying scorpions appeared above the stone spirit before blasting forth streaks of blue light out of their stingers. On this occasion, the stone spirit was completely bound by the golden lightning net, so the blue streaks of light were able to vanish into its body in a flash. A layer of blue mist instantly emerged around the stone spirit's body, and its yellow demonic flames instantly became completely dull and lusterless, as if it had encountered the bane of its existence. Within the span of just a few breaths, all the yellow flames were completely snuffed out, and the pipe dream stone spirit became even more infuriated. It gritted its teeth before inhaling violently, and it quickly expanded like a balloon while an extremely fearsome aura erupted from its body. As soon as Han Li sensed this aura, a thought immediately occurred to him, and his expression changed slightly as he instantly shot back to over 1,000 feet away. At this point, the stone spirit resembled an overinflated ball and was straining against the crackling golden lightning net around it. Master Black Rain harumphed coldly upon seeing this. "You think I'd let you self-detonate?" He then abruptly made a grabbing motion, and a thin net of silver lightning appeared in the air above the mountain summit before immediately descending toward the pipe dream stone spirit. A rumbling boom rang out as the silver net wound itself tightly around the stone spirit's body, following which Master Black Rain immediately made a hand seal. The lightning net became extremely bright and piercing, and it began to release countless silver runes that transformed the stone spirit into a dazzling ball of silver light. An incredible turn of events then unfolded. Within the silver net, the stone spirit's bulging body quickly began to shrink, and after just the span of a few breaths, it had reverted back to its original size. After that, it was unable to unleash any abilities no matter how hard it tried. The stone spirit was naturally extremely enraged, but was powerless to do anything. Master Black Rain was elated to see this, and he slowly descended from above with a smile on his face. "Hee, no matter how much you struggle, your efforts will prove to be futile in this silver celestial lightning net, so just settle down and come to the Holy Island with me. Rest assured, we're only borrowing your body. We won't be taking your life." In the instant that the stone spirit had been captured, the illusionary technique it had unleashed was dispelled, and only then did Buddhist Master Tian Chan manage to return to his senses. Looks like you managed to complete the mission, Brother Black Rain. I'm truly embarrassed by my own lack of contribution. If Brother Han hadn't been present, that thing really would have gotten away," Buddhist Master Tian Chan said in a slightly apologetic manner. "You're being far too modest, Buddhist Master Tian Chan. Without the pressure you were exerting on the stone spirit, it wouldn't have unleashed its illusionary technique so quickly, and fellow Taoist Han wouldn't have been able to stop it so easily. However, it's indeed true that fellow Taoist Han played a vital role in the completion of our mission," Master Black Rain chuckled. "You're far too kind, fellow Taoist Black Rain. I was only doing what was to be expected of me," Han Li said with a smile, then made a grabbing motion toward the stone spirit. A dull thunderclap rang out, and countless arcs of golden lightning emerged from the silver net before returning to his body. "That's divine devilbane lightning, right? I've heard that it's an extremely potent weapon against devilish beings." Master Black Rain clicked his tongue with wonder upon seeing this. He then pointed a finger toward the silver net as well, and the net began to flash with lightning while tightening even further at his behest. After a few flashes, the silver net shrank down to a fist-sized ball of silver threads, with the stone spirit trapped within it, before being drawn up Master Black Rain's sleeve. Are also some other cultivation arts aside from divine devilbane lightning that are very effective against devilish beings. However, these cultivation arts are either very difficult to use or have been lost in history, so there aren't many people in our human race who possess such cultivation arts. Otherwise, it wouldn't be such a struggle for us to ward off the devilish tribulation," Buddhist Master Tian Chan mused as he descended from above while appraising Han Li with a meaningful expression. "There's no point in speaking about something that's out of reach. We can only say that fellow Taoist Han was very fortunate to have obtained this divine devilbane lightning. I heard that, when used with a true lightning wheel technique, this lightning can pose a threat even to body integration stage devilish lords. It's a pity that our holy island only has the second half of the lightning wheel technique. If you ever get the opportunity to do so, I suggest you go and search for it in the primordial world, Brother Han. Perhaps the complete lightning wheel technique can be found in one of the foreign races," Master Black Rain suggested with a smile. "The lightning wheel technique is split up into halves." Han Li's heart stirred slightly upon hearing this. He had obtained a type of lightning wheel technique from the 4 demon monarchs of the Earth Abyss, and it was quite a powerful technique, but required too much time to set up. Thus, it was impractical for real battles, so he hadn't used it much. Indeed, the first half of the lightning wheel technique teaches one how to maximize the lightning's power, while the second half teaches one how to control the divine lightning. Both halves are indispensable, Master Black Rain explained. "I see. In that case, I really will have to venture into the primordial world to search for the technique if the opportunity arises." Han Li's expression remained unchanged, but internally, he was cursing the 4 demon monarchs. No wonder the lightning wheel technique was so impractical. The 4 demon monarchs had only bestowed upon him half of the technique. They had definitely done this on purpose, but then again, that was only to be expected. If Han Li had been in their shoes, he would have most likely done the same thing. After chatting for a while longer, Buddhist Master Tian Chan decided to depart. "The situation in the Holy Sovereign City isn't all that optimistic, and I've spent a lot of time here already. I have to go back to help the Holy Sovereign guard the city, so I'll be taking my leave now, fellow Taoists." Master Black Rain cupped his fist in a salute and said, "The Holy Island is in urgent need of this stone spirit, so I'll be heading back as well. Fellow Taoist Han, Buddhist Master Tian Chan, I hope we'll have a chance to meet again following the devilish tribulation. You'll be staying here for a few more days, right, fellow Taoist Han?" "Indeed, I'll be staying here for a while longer to use the earthly hellish flames. I wish both of you a safe and swift journey," Han Li said with a smile as he extended a farewell salute. Moments later, a ball of black light and a streak of white light rose up into the air from the mountain summit, then flew away in different directions. Han Li looked on as the two departed, and after they had disappeared into the distance, his smile gradually faded as he murmured to himself, "The second half of the lightning wheel technique, eh? Looks like I really will have to pay the Holy Island a visit. That'll have to wait until a later date. For now, I have to secure the chaotic yin-yang qi." As soon as his voice trailed off, Han Li's body blurred, and he appeared beside the giant crater before casting his gaze toward the bottom. The crater hadn't been affected much by the battle that had just taken place, and the yellow mist at the bottom was still making it impossible to see what lay in the depths of the crater. Han Li peered into the mist through narrowed eyes for a long while before casting his gaze through the surrounding area, upon which his brows furrowed slightly. All of a sudden, he flipped a hand over to produce a thick stack of formation flags, then flicked his wrist to send the flags scattering in all directions as streaks of light. The formation flags vanished into thin air amid flashes of spiritual light, and in the next instant, a layer of white mist permeated over the mountain, completely concealing Han Li along with the giant crater. Han Li stood still on the spot and swept both sleeves through the air to release 13 balls of buzzing purple light, all of which quickly disappeared into the mist. Immediately thereafter, green light flashed from his body, and a green figure detached itself from him before vanishing into the ground. After doing all that, Han Li sat down with his legs crossed beside the crater. He wore a solemn expression as he made a hand seal, then abruptly laid a hand onto his own head. A ball of golden light flashed, and a nascent soul that was around half a foot tall emerged above his head. The nascent soul bore a striking resemblance to Han Li, and as soon as it emerged, it waved a hand toward Han Li's physical body down below. A loud thunderclap rang out, and a ball that was bound by countless golden threads flew out of Han Li's body before hovering in midair. The nascent soul extended a finger toward the golden ball, and all of the golden threads quickly fell away to reveal a white wooden box. A faint smile appeared on the nascent soul's face, and it began to chant something. As it did so, spatial fluctuations erupted nearby, and a dozen or so five-colored beads silently emerged. These beads then transformed into eyeballs amid flashes of spiritual light, and bright five-colored light radiated from their surfaces. Around 10 minutes later, a wisp of Han Li's spiritual sense formed a clone that appeared over a boundless grassland. He swept his gaze over his surroundings, yet failed to discover the presence of Qigong. His expression changed slightly as he cast his gaze upward, and discovered that there was a scorching white sun around 100,000 feet above him. After that, Han Li merely stared at the sun in a completely expressionless and unblinking manner. After a while, an unfamiliar male voice suddenly rang out in the air above. "Haha, you really are no ordinary body integration stage being. I didn't think that a mere spiritual sense clone of yours would be able to detect my presence. I can see why Old Man Qi is placing his hope in you now." As soon as the voice faded, a black shadow flashed within the scintillating sun. Immediately thereafter, a ball of black light shot forth before stopping just over 100 feet away from Han Li. This was a burly, black-armored, heavily bearded man, and he was appraising Han Li with an intrigued smile. Han Li's heart stirred slightly at the sight of this man, but he maintained a calm expression as he asked, "Who are you and where is Senior Qi?" "Old Man Qi is currently doing something else right now. It'll most likely be quite some time before he can get here, so why don't you have a chat with me for now?" the man suggested with a stroke of his beard. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly as he said, "I don't seem to recognize you, and I've never heard Senior Qi mention the presence of someone else in this devil sealing lock." "Of course Old Man Qi wouldn't mention me to you. However, what I can tell you is that I can give you what he promised you, and I won't ask for as much in return," the man replied in a confident manner. "Oh, what do you propose, fellow Taoist?" Han Li asked as his expression changed slightly. "It's quite simple. Old Man Qi promised to give you the extraction and refinement methods for chaotic yin-yang qi, right? I'm also familiar with these methods, and I only ask for a third of the chaotic yin-yang qi that you managed to extract," the man immediately proposed. Han Li fell into a contemplative silence upon hearing this before shaking his head in the end. "That does indeed sound quite appealing, but I've already sworn a vow on my inner demons to Senior Qi, so I'm afraid I can't accept this offer." The man seemed to have already anticipated this answer from Han Li, and he chuckled. "He, you still haven't obtained the extraction and refinement methods from Old Man Qi, so you're not going breaking your vow." "That's true, but I've never even met you before. Don't you think it's a little naive to simply expect me to trust you right away?" Han Li asked in an indifferent voice. "Of course I'm aware that I'll have to earn your trust, and I'm prepared to do so. Setting aside everything else, I'll give you the extraction method for the chaotic yin-yang qi within this devil sealing lock right away, and I'll give you some other benefits after the event as well," the man said with a mysterious smile. "Other benefits?" Han Li's heart stirred slightly upon hearing this, and a hesitant look appeared on his face. However, right at this moment, bursts of rumbling suddenly rang out in the surrounding space, and the grassland down below blurred before transforming into a barren desert. On top of that, dark clouds had appeared over the entire sky, and countless silver lightning snakes were dancing within the clouds. "Impossible! How did he manage to get out so quickly?" the man exclaimed as his expression changed drastically. Han Li was naturally also quite startled by this turn of events. An enraged rumbling voice then suddenly rang out from within the dark clouds. "How dare you plot against me like this, Feng Zai? Did you really think you'd be able to get away with this?" The voice belonged to none other than Qi, and the entire heavens were trembling from his fury. The dark clouds up above converged violently to form a massive inky black hand that was around 1,000 feet in size, and it descended toward the burly man with devastating force. Before it had even reached the burly man, a burst of enormous force came crashing down from above, and Han Li's spiritual sense clone was instantly completely immobilized. In the face of this tremendous force, the surrounding acre of desert sank down several tens of feet, creating a gargantuan crater in the sand. The burly man was situated at the center of the crater, and a vast expanse of black light was suddenly released from his suit of armor. Letter 1D4 1F, letter 1D563, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D556, letter 1D568, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D5F0, letter 1D698, letter 1D46. In the instant that the burst of tremendous force came into contact with the black light, most of its power was diverted away, and the burly armored man merely swayed slightly but remained completely unscathed. Qi faltered slightly upon seeing this before becoming even more enraged. "You've mastered the great diversion technique. No wonder you dared to do something like this. Let me see if you have what it takes to oppose me." As soon as his voice trailed off, the dark clouds up above surged before forming a massive devilish projection with 3 heads and 6 arms. Just as the projection was about to descend from above, the burly man's expression darkened, and he raised a hand as he yelled, "Stop! Do you not want the chaotic yin-yang qi anymore? Once I take care of you, the chaotic yin-yang qi will be all mine." Qi replied in a vicious voice, and the 6 arms of the devilish projection swept through the air as balls of black qi emerged over its hands. The balls of black qi then transformed into massive balls of light that it prepared to hurl toward the burly man. "HMPH, do you really think you can extract chaotic yin-yang qi out of the devil's sealing lock using your method?" the burly man asked as a peculiar look appeared on his face. "What do you mean by that? Didn't we devise the method to extract chaotic yin-yang qi from the devil's sealing lock many years ago? Are you trying to make me doubt myself so you can stall?" Qi roared in response, but the devilish projection up above stopped what it was doing nonetheless. "Why would I need to stall for time? Do you think I still fear you after mastering this great diversion technique? I simply don't want both of us to be harmed in an unnecessary battle. As for whether what I say is true or not, if you weren't concerned to begin with, why did you stop?" the burly man chuckled nonchalantly. The giant devilish projection up above fell completely still upon hearing this. Moments later, the devilish projection dissipated into black qi again, and Qi emerged with a dark expression. Han Li quickly assessed the situation before deciding to remain silent and simply watch as everything unfolded. "MPH, you hid the fact that you'd already mastered the great diversion technique from me for so long, so you must have been plotting this for a very long time. Setting aside whether the technique really is as powerful as it's said to be, you seem to be implying that you've found another method to extract chaotic yin-yang qi. How do I know if you're telling the truth? All of us joined forces to create the original extraction method, yet you expect me to place my trust in something that you devised on your own." Qi scoffed in a cold voice. "I only managed to discover a fatal flaw with the original method by chance. As for whether this new method is authentic or not, I'll tell you about it, and you can make the decision for yourself. If you think my method isn't viable, then we can just battle it out here. That bastard Zhu Guang will be the only beneficiary to our conflict, but if you insist, I'm certainly not going to back down," the burly man chuckled coldly. "All right, I'll listen to what you have to say, but if it turns out to be nonsense, HMPH. Qi didn't finish his sentence, but the threat being made was already very apparent. "You've made a wise decision. However, if the extraction method that I propose is indeed a viable one, then it would only be right for me to get a third of the chaotic yin-yang qi that's extracted, right?" the burly man chuckled while reiterating his condition in an implacable voice. "We'll discuss that after I verify the feasibility of your extraction method. Qigong replied in a cold manner. Thus, Feng Zai's lips tremored as he transmitted his voice to Qigong, while Han Li looked on in silence. A day later, a ball of black light was flying through the air over a murky gray mountain range at an incredible speed. Within the black light was a thin, elderly man. It was none other than Master Black Rain, who had just separated from Han Li not long ago. He was currently flying at full speed en route back to the Holy Island. Two massive mountains, both of which were around 100,000 feet tall, loomed in the distance right in his path. Thus, Master Black Rain diverted slightly off his original path to fly through the gap between the two mountains. After just a few flashes, the ball of black light had reached the area between the two mountains, yet just as it was about to pass through, two earth-shattering booms suddenly erupted without any warning. The two mountains tremored violently, then crashed down viciously toward Master Black Rain in unison. Even before the mountains had struck the ball of black light, countless rocks and stones were already raining down from above. Master Black Rain was naturally greatly alarmed by this, but he remained calm and quickly made a hand seal before expelling a small silver bell out of his mouth. A bell chime rang out, and the small bell instantly manifested a silver projection that was over 1,000 tall, which completely encompassed Master Black Rain. At the same time, a series of silver sound waves swept forth in all directions, pulverizing all of the falling rocks and stones they came into contact with. Gray light flashed between the mountains, and two massive hands constructed from countless rocks and stones suddenly extended out of the mountains. Each hand was several thousand feet in size and imbued with boundless power. Two earth-shattering booms rang out as the gargantuan hands struck the bell projection from two sides. The bell was quite a powerful treasure, but in the face of such a devastating blow, the projection was still instantly destroyed. A hint of panic finally began to appear on Master Black Rain's face upon seeing this, and he immediately swept a sleeve through the air to release a ball of silver light. A loud thunderclap rang out, and a net that was constructed from countless arcs of silver lightning was unfurled. This was none other than the silver celestial lightning net. With this net's profound abilities, he would be safe from any assailant. Feeling a lot more reassured, Master Black Rain began to chant something while making a grabbing motion with one hand, and several balls of spiritual light appeared over his palm in unison. However, just as he was about to summon other treasures to retaliate against his assailant, an incredible turn of events suddenly unfolded. Spatial fluctuations erupted nearby, and a slender hand that was as fair as jade suddenly emerged. The hand made a casual grabbing motion and caught the lightning net in its grasp. As the 5 fingers of the hand clenched around the net, Master Black Rain was struck by a burst of excruciating pain in his soul. At the same time, he lost his spiritual sense connection with the silver celestial lightning net, and he involuntarily yelled as he began to sway unsteadily in midair. During this split-second delay, the two massive stone hands converged viciously like a pair of small mountains. In response, Master Black Rain could only hurriedly summon a suit of green armor that appeared over his body. However, the two gigantic stone palms were simply far too powerful. An earth-shattering boom rang out, and Master Black Rain's physical body was crushed into a cloud of blood mist, while his protective spiritual light and suit of green armor were both also instantly destroyed. A ball of black light shot out of the blood mist, then vanished into thin air in a flash. A peal of pleasant laughter then rang out as the hand that was holding the silver lightning net extended a finger, flicking it toward the direction that the ball of black light had just disappeared in. A ball of silver light shot forth and also instantly disappeared. In the next instant, a dull thump rang out, and the ball of black light stumbled out of thin air over 1,000 feet away. As soon as it re-emerged, it immediately continued to flee into the distance like a speeding arrow. Within the black light was a purple nascent soul that was several inches tall. The nascent soul was completely identical to Master Black Rain in appearance, but its face was completely pale, and it wore a horrified expression. "It's too late to try and get away now," the female voice chuckled coldly. The slender hand then waved through the air, and the lightning net it was holding abruptly vanished, only to be replaced by an antiquated mirror, which was swept toward Master Black Rain's nascent soul from afar. A pillar of black light shot forth from the mirror and encompassed the nascent soul in a flash. The nascent soul immediately felt the air around it tighten, following which a burst of enormous suction force stopped it cold in its tracks before forcibly dragging it backward. Master Black Rain was truly petrified now. In his desperation, his nascent soul let loose a low roar as it expelled a triangular badge, then released several balls of blood essence, all of which vanished into the badge as blood mist. As the item that Master Black Rain had assigned to protect his nascent soul, this triangular badge was naturally quite a powerful treasure, and it transformed into a ball of azure light that encompassed the entire nascent soul. Immediately thereafter, the nascent soul's backward momentum was arrested, and it was able to continue fleeing from the scene. That's an infernal azure badge of the human race. I was a little too careless. The pleasant female voice rang out again, but on this occasion it was tinged with a hint of surprise. Spatial fluctuations erupted, and the owner of the slender hand silently emerged, revealing herself to be a woman in a blue palatial dress. The woman had a set of gorgeous facial features that were as fair as jade, and her figure was also very alluring, but her eyes gave off an azure light that was rather unsettling to behold. In the instant that she emerged, she cast her gaze toward the nascent soul in the distance, then made an extremely profound hand seal. Immediately thereafter, a devilish projection with 3 heads and 6 arms appeared behind her, and it transformed into a fearsome black-armored devilish being amid a flash of black light. The suit of armor being worn by the devilish being was extremely intricate in design, with layers upon layers of complex runes inscribed on its surface. The devilish being's 3 faces were completely concealed by black visors, and as soon as it appeared, it raised its 3 heads to the heavens and let loose a long cry. Its 6 eyes flashed like 6 balls of azure flames, and it made a grabbing motion toward the nascent soul with all 6 of its hands in unison. A peculiar scene then ensued. An ear-splitting boom rang out as 6 black vortexes appeared at the same time, then exploded in unison, causing a massive commotion in the process. The entire space collapsed as an even larger vortex appeared in front of the woman, and the vortex released countless black runes that vanished into thin air as countless specks of black light. All of a sudden, the nascent soul that was fleeing in the distance was struck by a bone-chilling sensation, yet before it had a chance to react, an identical black vortex abruptly appeared in the air above it. A black devilish claw that was enshrouded in devilish flames shot out of the vortex like lightning, and the nascent soul only had a chance to cry out in alarm before it was caught by the devilish claw and pulled back into the vortex. The vortex then rapidly shrank before vanishing into nothingness, and it was as if it had never appeared there in the first place. In contrast, the vortex in front of the woman still remained, and was slowly rotating on the spot. A faint smile appeared on the woman's face as she raised a hand and made a grabbing motion toward the vortex, upon which a ball of black light emerged from within. It was none other than Master Black Rain's nascent soul. The nascent soul's eyes were tightly shut, and its face was deathly pale. Its entire body had been bound tightly by black threads, and it had been captured alive. The woman aimed an expressionless glance at the nascent soul, then swept a sleeve downward. A burst of black light instantly swept forth, picking up an item from the ground before delivering it into her hand. The item was a storage bracelet that was glowing with faint yellow light, and the woman pointed a finger at it while closing her eyes at the same time. Moments later, the woman reopened her eyes and murmured to herself, "Oh, a pipe dream stone spirit, eh? That's quite interesting. That man must have been sent here with the sole purpose of capturing this stone spirit. No wonder Liu Jai asked me to make this trip in person. It looks like the humans are plotting something. We'll have to keep a closer eye on them from now on. If I want to investigate this matter, I'll have to search that man's soul, but all high-grade human cultivators have special secret techniques that they use to lock their own spiritual sense. I can break through with my devilish arts and through brute force, but I'll still only be able to search a very small portion of his soul. I wonder if that portion will just so happen to contain the information I need." With that in mind, the woman didn't hesitate any longer. She swept a hand toward the vortex, and it disappeared along with the devilish being behind her, leaving only Master Black Rain's nascent soul hovering on the spot. She flipped a hand over to produce that antiquated black mirror again before waving it toward the nascent soul, and a burst of black light surged forth to draw the nascent soul directly into the mirror. "Find a secluded place where I won't be disturbed. I'm going to search this human cultivator's soul. With my current powers, it'll most likely take quite a few days before an outcome can be reached," the woman said in a nonchalant manner as she stowed the antiquated mirror away, as if she were issuing an instruction to someone. "Yes, Mistress Xianxia, one." 2 rumbling voices rang out from the 2 giant mountains nearby, following which the two gargantuan stone palms were slowly withdrawn. A flash of gray light then appeared, and following the span of just a few breaths, the two mountains had transformed into a pair of giants, each of which was over 10,000 feet tall. The two giants were covered in gray rocks and stones, and each of them had 4 arms, creating a terrifying sight to behold. "Thank you for helping me destroy that man's physical body, elders. Otherwise, it would have been a lot more troublesome for me to capture him." The woman was speaking to the two giants in a very polite manner. "It's our honor to be able to lend you our assistance, Mistress Xianxia," one of the giants said as a barely discernible smile appeared on its rocky face. "Immortal Galaxy Tree, aw shit, she's finally here." The woman nodded in response before sweeping her sleeves through the air, releasing 2 bursts of white light that vanished into the bodies of the two giants. A string of cracks and pops rang out from the giants' bodies, and they quickly shrank down to a pair of first-sized gray stone balls, both of which then instantly disappeared up the woman's sleeve. After that, a black cloud emerged beneath the woman's feet, then encompassed her body as she flew away toward a certain direction. Han Li's eyelids fluttered slightly as he sat beside the giant crater. He slowly opened his eyes, and a peculiar look appeared on his face. He had just withdrawn his spiritual sense clone from within the devil's sealing lock, and he murmured to himself, "From the looks of it, that chaotic yin-yang chi must be extremely important to both of the devils. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gotten into such a heated altercation. Will the two of them be able to escape from the devil's sealing lock right away after obtaining the chaotic yin-yang chi? No, surely not. The devil's sealing lock is an incomplete, profound heavenly treasure. No matter how incredible that chaotic yin-yang chi is, there's no way it could have such a miraculous effect. Those two are most likely plotting something else." After contemplating the issue for a while, Han Li seemed to have suddenly arrived at a decision. There's no need for me to overthink this. After I split the chaotic yin-yang chi with those two devils, I'll find a way to toss the devil's sealing lock back into the elder devil realm. I have to make a trip there anyway. I'll just drop off the devil's sealing lock then. Those two are nothing more than spiritual sense entities without physical bodies anyway. Who cares what'll become of them once they escape from the devil's sealing lock in the elder devil realm? With that in mind, Han Li pointed a finger toward the devil's sealing lock before him, and it shot forth directly toward the giant crater before hovering right over its center. Immediately thereafter, Han Li took a deep breath before making a hand seal while chanting something, and a projection with 3 heads and 6 arms appeared behind him. The projection made hand seals with all 6 of its arms, and a vast expanse of golden light swept forth from its body before vanishing into the devil's sealing lock. As a result, the surface of the white wooden box instantly took on a shimmering golden color, as if a coat of molten gold had been applied to it. Right at this moment, a layer of azure light appeared on Han Li's face, and he let loose a low cry before pointing a finger at the wooden box again. A burst of silver flames emerged from his fingertip before enveloping the wooden box, and at the same time, the golden projection behind Han Li opened all 6 of its eyes in unison. It then strode directly toward the burning wooden box, covering a distance of over 100 feet in just a few flashes, before reaching out to grab onto the box. After that, the projection carried the box and descended slowly toward the bottom of the giant crater. Even though it wasn't descending very quickly, it still disappeared into the yellow mist down below after the span of just a few breaths. Han Li continued to chant his incantation while making different hand seals, and a burst of indescribable glacial chi soon began to emanate from his body. A layer of faint yellow frost spread over the ground around him, and moments later, the azure light on Han Li's face faded while his entire body was enveloped by a layer of yellow light. At the same time, a layer of yellow frost also began to appear over his body, and at this point, the yellow mist within the crater was already churning violently. An occasional rumbling boom would ring out from underground, as if there were something constantly exploding within the depths of the crater. Han Li's expression remained unchanged, and he seemed to be paying no heed to the changes taking place on his body. He merely continued to do what he was doing without pause. Time slowly passed by, and 7 days and 7 nights had flown past. Han Li was still seated beside the giant crater. If a normal cultivator with inferior magic power, spiritual sense, and physical constitution had been in his place, they would have most likely already collapsed. Even for Han Li, this was quite a taxing endeavor, and he was beginning to feel rather weary. At this point, the rumbling booms echoing deep within the giant crater had already receded. The churning of the yellow mist had also become a lot less violent, and it was clear that the secret technique that he was unleashing was in its closing stages. All of a sudden, a loud boom that was akin to a rumbling thunderclap erupted from the bottom of the crater, and countless rays of golden light erupted upward, piercing through the layers of mist and completely illuminating the entire giant crater. Success! Han Li couldn't help but exclaim in an excited manner as his eyes lit up. If he could obtain this chaotic yin-yang qi, then he would definitely be able to progress to the late body integration stage in a short time. If he could reach that level, then both his magic power and abilities would be enhanced significantly, and he would be far better equipped to protect himself during the devilish tribulation, as well as the trip into the Elder Devil realm. With that in mind, he immediately sprang into action. A layer of 5-colored flames appeared over his body, and all of the yellow frost was melted away. He then raised a hand and made a grabbing motion toward the bottom of the crater, upon which the mist within surged violently, and the golden projection slowly re-emerged. It was still holding the wooden box, but there was now an azure ball of light contained within its body. The ball of light was around the size of an egg and completely mundane in appearance, but it contained 2 pea-sized specks of light, one of which was black while the other was white. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this, but in the next instant, his smile abruptly stiffened, and he cast his gaze upward with an alarmed look in his eyes. Almost at the exact same moment, an earth-shattering boom erupted up above, following which a burst of devastating force struck the restrictions in the air. In the face of this ferocious attack, the restriction was instantly shattered, and the mist enshrouding the mountain summit was completely swept away by a gust of fierce wind. A slender female figure then appeared up above before casting her gaze toward Han Li in a cold manner. Her gaze was as frosty as ice, and Han Li's face was struck by a pang of sharp pain under her cold gaze. Looks like the information I obtained from searching that human cultivator's soul was accurate, the woman mused in a cold voice, and Han Li's heart jolted upon hearing this. He didn't know who this woman was, but judging from her aura, she was clearly a high-grade devilish being. Han Li was naturally very perplexed and alarmed, but there was no time for him to ponder the situation. He abruptly reached out with one hand before making a grabbing motion, and the golden projection transformed into a ball of golden light that hurtled directly toward Han Li with the wooden box and that ball of azure light contained within it. The woman faltered slightly upon seeing this, but after she caught sight of the wooden box and the ball of azure light, her expression instantly changed drastically. That's the devil's sealing lock and chaotic yin-yang qi. I see, so you were extracting chaotic yin-yang qi using the earthly hellish flames here. The woman immediately swept a sleeve through the air as she spoke, and a white piece of fabric instantly shot forth. After just a single flash, it covered a distance of several thousand feet, appearing directly above the golden projection before descending like lightning. This was a massive white silk handkerchief that was around 10 feet in size. Its surface was riddled with shimmering silver runes, and it was clearly a powerful treasure. The woman was attempting to use this treasure to intercept the devil's sealing lock and chaotic yin-yang qi. Almost at the exact same moment, violent tremors ran through the ground on either side of the giant crater, and countless rocks and stones were sent flying in all directions as 2 massive gray stone hands erupted out of the ground. The 2 huge hands clamped viciously toward Han Li, and before they had even struck him, 2 bursts of immense invisible force had crashed down upon him. Han Li was naturally quite alarmed and enraged by this, but he didn't panic in the slightest. He harumphed coldly while making a hand seal, then uttered the word explode. The golden light that enveloped the wooden box and the chaotic yin-yang qi flashed violently before exploding into a golden halo. The space in the wake of this golden halo warped and twisted, and the white silk handkerchief was forced to a momentary standstill. Taking advantage of this opportunity, a huge green hand suddenly appeared out of thin air before instantly catching the wooden box and azure ball of light. Immediately thereafter, the massive hand transformed into a green humanoid figure. It was none other than Han Li's spirit body. As soon as the spirit body appeared, it made a hand seal and vanished on the spot as a ball of green light. At the same time, golden light flashed from Han Li's body, and he began to swell drastically in size while sprouting thick golden fur. In the blink of an eye, he had transformed into a giant golden ape that was over 100 feet tall, and the tremendous force weighing down upon him was instantly completely nullified. As soon as Han Li completed his transformation, He let loose a thunderous roar and launched his fists viciously toward the oncoming giant stone palms. Two earth-shattering booms erupted, and Han Li gave a muffled groan as he was forced back several steps, while large sections of the two massive stone hands were reduced to rubble and shrapnel. Right at this moment, spatial fluctuations erupted behind Han Li, and the spirit body emerged while holding the wooden box and the ball of azure light before vanishing into Han Li's body. At the same time, Han Li let loose an enraged roar as he opened his mouth to expel a thick pillar of golden light directly toward the woman up above. As for Han Li himself, he transformed into a giant silver four-winged bird with silver arcs of lightning flashing all over its body. He spread his four wings and vanished into thin air as an azure and white thread of light. In the next instant, spatial fluctuations erupted several thousand feet away, and the thread of light re-emerged before instantly disappearing again. This woman clearly possessed unfathomable powers, and Han Li currently wasn't in his best condition, so he immediately chose to flee. In this four-winged Kun-Peng form, he was too fast even for the three Zhu Guang clones to catch, so he was very confident in his ability to escape. The woman waved a hand through the air to release a streak of inky black sword chi, which vanquished the oncoming golden pillar of light with ease. However, during that brief delay, Han Li had already traveled so far into the distance that he was nothing more than a barely visible black dot on the horizon. "You think you can get away from me? How delusional!" A cold light flashed through the woman's eyes as she cast her gaze toward the fleeing black dot in the distance. She waved a hand downward, and the two stone giants completely emerged from the ground down below. As they flew up into the air, they converged to form a giant dazzling ball of gray light at the woman's behest. The woman then transformed into a ball of black chi before vanishing into the massive ball of light, and moments later, the dazzling light receded to reveal a stone hall that was several hundred feet tall. The hall was entirely gray in color with a dozen or so crude stone pillars, giving off a rather primitive sense of beauty and artistry. The woman stood at the center of the hall, then gently tapped a foot down onto it before commanding it to give chase. A layer of white spiritual light instantly appeared over the surface of the stone hall, and it shot forth like a shooting star in pursuit of Han Li. The stone hall appeared to be quite bulky and maladroit, but it covered a distance of around 1,000 feet after just a single flash, and it wasn't much slower than the four-winged Kun-Peng that Han Li had transformed into. Han Li had also naturally discovered this, and he became even more reluctant to engage his pursuer in battle. The woman clearly wasn't an ordinary devilish lord, and he certainly wasn't willing to face her in his current lackluster condition. Furthermore, not only did the woman's aura strike him with a sense of extreme peril, it was also rather familiar to him. It would be very unwise for Han Li to engage her in battle before ascertaining her identity. Even though he was only slightly faster than his pursuer in his Kun-Peng form, the gap between them would still constantly be widening, so he would eventually be able to completely shake her off. The woman had to be aware of this as well, so Han Li was rather perplexed about what her intentions were. However, he had no time to consider such matters at the moment. He was focused solely on fleeing the scene as quickly as he could. At their astonishing speeds, a distance of hundreds of thousands of kilometers had been covered after just a single hour. At this point, Han Li had already opened up a gap of several tens of kilometers between himself and the stone hall. This was naturally an extremely far distance for the average person, but for beings of Han Li's caliber, it was a distance that could be covered in mere moments. Even so, the gap was still steadily widening, and Han Li's heart finally eased slightly as he began to ponder exactly who this woman was. Meanwhile, the woman was seated on a stone chair at the center of the hall, casting her cold gaze straight ahead in an unblinking manner. HMPH, this human brat was nothing more than an ant in a lower realm the last time I encountered him, but since then, he's progressed to the mid-body integration stage in less than 2,000 years and attained such a powerful transformation technique. It appears that he's not to be underestimated. However, he's dreaming if he thinks he can get away from me with these trifling abilities alone. Shigan, initiate instantaneous teleportation right away. I'm sure you've had enough time to lock onto him, the woman commanded with a cold expression. In response, a giant rough face took shape on the ceiling of the stone hall, and it replied, "Yes, Mistress Yuan Cha. The two of us will initiate teleportation right away, but there's still a potential margin for error of around 500 meters that you'll need to account for." 500 meters is nothing. I'll be able to stop him for sure, the woman said in a nonchalant manner. Yes. The giant face immediately gave an affirmative reply, and in the next instant, the stone hall suddenly stopped in midair. Immediately thereafter, two different strange voices began to chant an incantation, and countless five-colored runes emerged over the surface of the stone hall amid a flash of spiritual light. These runes were extremely profound, and they flashed violently before detaching themselves from the stone hall, dispersing through the air to form a massive five-colored formation. The stone hall was situated right at the center of the formation, and it vanished on the spot after a flash of dazzling light. In the next instant, Han Li suddenly felt a burst of spatial fluctuations appear around 500 meters behind him, and his heart jolted as he turned around, just in time to see a giant formation appear out of thin air. Five-colored light flashed, and a massive object began to emerge from the formation. Crab. Han Li was adept in formations and instantaneous teleportation techniques himself, so he was naturally immediately able to identify this as a teleportation formation. As such, he immediately stopped in his flight while a vertical black demonic eye appeared on his glabella. This was none other than Han Li's Law Destruction Eye, and he was forcibly using it in his Kun Peng form. This was something that would have been completely beyond his capabilities back before he reached the body integration stage. As soon as the Law Destruction Eye appeared, it expelled a black thread that was as thin as a strand of hair. The black thread then instantly transformed into a thick, inky black pillar of light that vanished into thin air in a flash. A resounding boom rang out, and the black pillar of light appeared right in front of the teleportation formation, before striking it with devastating force. Black and five-colored light immediately intertwined to inundate the entire formation, and after unleashing the attack, the Law Destruction Eye on Han Li's glabella instantly vanished. Immediately thereafter, he flapped his wings and continued to flee, choosing to unleash no further attacks. Han Li was clearly aware that the attack from his Law Destruction Eye wouldn't actually be able to harm his pursuer, which was why he had made such a quick decision to continue flying away. As it turned out, he was right. After the explosion of black and five-colored light receded, the space at the center of the giant formation warped and blurred, following which the giant stone hall emerged in a slightly unsteady manner. Under the influence of the chaotic spatial powers in the nearby area, the stone hall was unable to immediately continue pursuing Han Li. Instead, a white light barrier had appeared around it, and it was swaying incessantly amid the violent spatial fluctuations. He has a Law Destruction Eye. The woman's expression darkened upon making this realization. After just a few flashes, Han Li was nothing more than a black spot on the horizon again. Letter 1D627, letter 1D633, letter 1D626, letter 212F, letter 1D4CC, letter 1D626, letter 1D4B8, letter 1D630, letter 1D4C2. Chase him down, the woman commanded in an enraged voice. The giant stone face appeared once again on the ceiling of the hall, and it said in an apologetic manner, "I'm afraid we won't be able to give chase right away, mistress. Due to the disruption from spatial powers, we'll only be able to continue after making some adjustments. HMPH, by the time you're done, that human brat will be completely gone. Let me lend you a hand." The woman harumphed coldly before gripping onto the smooth armrests of her stone chair, then injected a burst of inky black devilish chi into it. "Thank you for your assistance, Mistress Xianxia. We'll be able to continue right away now," the stone face said in an elated manner. Thus, not long after that, the stone hall shot forth through the air again. Even though the stone hall had failed to stop Han Li, the distance between the two had been closed down significantly, and the woman continued to give chase with renewed determination. Thus, whenever Han Li managed to widen the gap between himself and the stone hall, the woman would make use of its teleportation ability to close the gap. Having learned her lesson from the first teleportation, she made sure not to get too close to Han Li during her subsequent teleportations. Thus, even with his Law Destruction Eye, Han Li was unable to thwart her teleportation any further. This was naturally quite worrying for Han Li. He also had his lightning formation that he could use for teleportation, but he was unable to control the destination at all. 1. If he were to only teleport over a short distance, there was a possibility that he could end up right next to his pursuer. If he wanted to teleport over a longer distance, then he would require more time to set up the formation, so that wasn't a viable option either. Furthermore, even if he could teleport himself thousands of kilometers away, he still wouldn't be able to escape the woman's spiritual sense detection, and she'd simply catch up again eventually. It seemed that she was even more difficult to shake off than the 3 clones of sacred ancestor Zhu Guang. Thus, the two continued to fly through the air for over half a day. Due to the fact that Han Li had intentionally chosen a very sparsely populated path, he didn't encounter any devilish beings that could impede him along the way. However, the woman clearly wasn't going to let him off the hook, so he had to think of a way to shake her off. Unbeknownst to him, the woman was currently communicating with another devilish being through her antiquated black mirror. Immortal Galaxy Tree. Wonder if the author meant a hastily set-up formation. Since Han Li did use the lightning formation to kill that armored giant right at the start of the Deep Heaven City battle, albeit that was an extremely short distance that he was able to see with his own eyes. The image in the mirror depicted a crimson-robed young man, and he had a rather dark expression on his face. Yuan Cha, when did you send a clone into the spirit realm? If I recall correctly, you're not on the list of the sacred ancestors designated to descend into this realm. Zhu Guang, I only sent a clone of mine into this realm to assist Liu Jai. I'm not ruling over any army, and I don't have any intention of getting my true body to descend into this realm, so I'm not breaking my agreement with everyone. As such, you have no right to accuse me of anything, the woman replied in an expressionless manner. Zhu Guang was furious, but he was clearly also rather wary of the woman, and he harumphed coldly. HMPH, no matter how you try to explain it, you're just twisting the narrative. Setting that aside for now, if you're assisting Liu Jai, then why have you appeared in this area that I'm overseeing? Don't you owe me an explanation for that? Don't tell me that the detection treasure in my battle canoe is yielding a false result. I am indeed currently in the area that you're overseeing, and I'm pursuing a human cultivator. This is an order from Liu Jai as well, so what I'm doing is definitely beneficial to the army of our holy race, the woman replied as her expression eased slightly. You're pursuing a human cultivator. With those 2 giant stone devils up your sleeve, surely no human under the Grand Ascension stage can escape from you. However, seeing as this is a matter that concerns the entire army of our holy race, it would be unbefitting of me to not lend you my assistance. I'll send out a clone of mine to meet up with you right away, Zhu Guang said in a meaningful voice. It sounds like you still doubt me. By the way, I've heard that you sent your 3 clones into the spirit realm. Aren't you afraid that something will happen to your true body in our holy realm? Besides, don't you think it's too late for you to send out a clone now? By the time your clone gets here, I'll have already taken care of the human cultivator here, the woman said as a cold smile appeared on her face. I have no need to explain myself to you. My clone isn't far away from where you are right now. It should be able to meet up with you in about half a day. I just so happen to have borrowed the all-encompassing plate from Du Long. I'm sure it'll be of assistance to you, Zhu Guang replied. What? How did you get Du Long to lend you his all-encompassing plate? He values that treasure as much as his own life. A stunned look appeared on the woman's face upon hearing this. Anything can be borrowed as long as the price is right. Who's this human cultivator that you're currently pursuing? They must be an extremely important figure in the human race to get away from you. I'll contact my clones right away so they can ambush him from the front, and will trap him from both sides, Zhu Guang proposed. The woman was silent for a moment before replying in a serious manner. You can help me hunt him down, but I've had a run-in with him in a lower realm in the past, so after we capture him, you have to leave him to me. Otherwise, I'd rather take care of him on my own, even if it means I'll have to expend a bit more time. Oh, he's crossed you in a lower realm. That's quite interesting. I heard that a spiritual sense clone of yours was killed in a lower realm. Could the perpetrator be the human cultivator that you're currently pursuing? Haha, what a coincidence. Zhu Guang chuckled as a mocking look appeared on his face. If you contacted me just to mock me, then there's no need for us to communicate any further. The woman's expression darkened as she raised a hand to cut off the communication. However, Zhu Guang suddenly raised a hand to stop her. Hold on, I agree to your condition. However, after this, you have to help me do something as well, and after that's done, you have to leave the area that I'm overseeing. What do you need help with? The woman was rather surprised to hear this. It's quite simple. I also need you to help me take care of a human cultivator, Zhu Guang immediately replied. Didn't your 3 clones descend into this realm already? Why do you still need my assistance? You're not trying to recruit this clone of mine to attack a Grand Ascension stage human cultivator, are you? The woman asked with furrowed brows. Rest assured, I wouldn't be willing to sacrifice these clones of mine to attack a Grand Ascension stage being. The human I'm targeting is a body integration cultivator, but he possesses many powerful treasures and abilities. I did indeed send my 3 clones into this realm, but they're not carrying my most powerful treasures, which is why I was unable to take that human down. With your assistance, I'm sure the outcome will be different, Zhu Guang replied with a smile. The woman's expression eased upon hearing this, and she said, "If it's a body integration stage human cultivator, then I have no objections. You have yourself a deal. Tell me how to contact those clones of yours." Zhu Guang naturally gave an affirmative reply before pointing a finger forward to release a string of silver runes out of the mirror. Letter 1D65B, letter 1D493, letter 1D486, letter 1D65A, letter 1D498, letter 1D486, letter 1D484, letter 1D490, letter 1D4F6. Meanwhile, Han Li was still hurtling through the air up ahead, completely oblivious to the fact that his 2 almighty devilish enemies had unknowingly joined forces to hunt him down. He was racking his brains for a way out of this situation as he flew, but was unable to think of anything right away. Not long ago, he had just faced sacred ancestor Zhu Guang's clones, and he had expended most of his temporary formation treasures, so he was lacking the resources to keep his pursuer at bay. Furthermore, he had no idea what type of abilities the devilish woman possessed, and that made it very difficult for him to formulate a plan against her. After thinking for a long while, he decided that he had to ascertain the woman's powers and abilities first before he could think about anything else. After all, only by knowing one's enemy could one assure victory. With that in mind, countless feathers suddenly shot forth from his Kun-Peng body before transforming into talismans and formation tools. He set up a dozen or so traps of different sizes, then continued on his way. A short while later, a string of loud explosions erupted behind him, and the spiritual sense connection he had with those traps was instantly severed. His heart immediately sank upon seeing this. Judging from the speed at which the woman had broken through all of the traps he had set, he could ascertain that she was even more powerful than he had anticipated. Her powers were definitely far superior to those of the average devilish lord, and she was comparable to the 3 Zhu Guang clones. Furthermore, the familiar aura that she was giving off reminded him of a fearsome enemy, and the mere thought of her sent chills running down his spine. Could it be that this woman was a clone of that sacred ancestor Yuan Cha? In that case, it wasn't all that strange that she was so determined to hunt him down. Indeed, after some careful consideration, Han Li finally realized that the aura of this woman was rather similar to that of the soul fragment of sacred ancestor Yuan Cha that he had encountered, and that was quite an uneasy thought for him. After arriving at this realization, he was even more determined to refrain from engaging the woman in battle, and continued to flee as quickly as he could. He had already formulated a plan. The stone hall could teleport, but that would undoubtedly expend far more magic power than normal flight. As such, there was a very good chance that he would be able to outlast her in a contest of endurance. Thus, he had made up his mind to keep fleeing, even though flying at such a rapid speed was also quite taxing to him. After that, he no longer tried to set up any traps or formations. He merely summoned some pills and top-grade spirit stones that he used to replenish his lost magic power. The stone hall continued to give chase behind him, and half a day flew by in the blink of an eye. They had flown over a desert in the primordial world and arrived in the air above a swamp. The sky was very clear, and there was nothing obstructing Han Li's field of view aside from a few lazy white clouds. Han Li could sense that the frequency of the stone hall's teleportation was gradually beginning to drop off, and a hint of elation welled up in his heart. Right at this moment, a slightly feeble voice suddenly sounded in his spiritual sense. "Look out, Master, I can sense the aura of an enemy up ahead." The voice was very tender and seemed to belong to a child. Han Li was very startled by this voice. He immediately stopped in midair before hurriedly asking, "Who's there?" "Do you not recognize me, Master? I'm the leopard Kirin beast. I only just awakened and will need to go into hibernation again soon, but I can clearly sense that there are enemies up ahead who bear ill will toward you," the owner of the childish voice said in an urgent manner, then fell silent after a tender yawn. Han Li was quite bewildered to hear this. The leopard Kirin beast had been hibernating for several centuries, yet it had suddenly woken up at a time like this to issue those words of caution to him. Furthermore, the fact that it was now able to speak also came as quite a surprise to him. What was the enemy that the beast had just mentioned? Why hadn't he been able to sense anything? As these thoughts rapidly flashed through Han Li's mind, he quickly cast his gaze through the surrounding area while releasing his enormous spiritual sense in all directions. However, he couldn't sense anything suspicious nearby, and a hesitant look appeared on his face. Meanwhile, there were three crimson-robed figures standing side by side within a mysterious treasure, appraising a giant hovering crystalline screen together. On the surface of the massive screen was the image of a giant bird, with silver arcs of lightning revolving all around its body. The massive bird had two pairs of wings, and was appraising its surroundings with a suspicious and bewildered look in its eyes. Who would have thought that this would be the human cultivator that Xianxia is pursuing? He, that makes things a lot easier for me. The crimson figure standing in the middle chuckled coldly with barely repressed rage in his voice. The crimson figure was none other than one of the sacred ancestor Zhu Guang's clones. Letter 1D557, letter 1D42B, letter 1D41E, letter 1D556, letter 1D568, letter 1D41E, letter 1D41C, letter 1D5FC, letter 1D696. Don't celebrate too early. Don't forget the condition that we initially proposed to Xianxia, another identical clone reminded in a calm voice. HMPH, seeing as Xianxia is pursuing the same target as us, the condition we raised will naturally have to be changed. We can hand that man over to her, but we didn't promise to hand over his treasures to her as well, sacred ancestor Zhu Guang harumphed coldly in response. I'm not sure Xianxia would be willing to accept such an arrangement. We can split her some of the treasures, but we have to recover the devil sealing lock and purple word cauldron, the clone said with a shake of his head. Split her some of the treasures. That human brat clearly possesses many powerful treasures. Are you willing to pass them up? Sacred ancestor Zhu Guang asked with pursed lips. We have no choice. Don't forget that she has the backing of Liu Jai. Now would not be a good time to mess with her, the clone replied in a solemn manner. Indeed, that Liu Jai is quite a big problem. A hint of wariness appeared on sacred ancestor Zhu Guang's face. All right, stop getting ahead of yourselves. We might not even be able to capture that human brat. He seems to have sensed our presence, so it most likely won't be possible to ambush him, the final clone said. He sensed our presence? Surely not. We've already concealed everything with the all-encompassing plate. There's no way that he'll be able to sense us unless he's a grand ascension cultivator. At the very most, he's only become suspicious that there's someone nearby. With Xianxia hot on his heels, he won't be able to remain here for long, sacred ancestor Zhu Guang said in an unconvinced manner. Is that so? I don't think that's. Hold on, what is he doing? The final clone faltered mid-sentence before letting loose a cry of alarm. The expressions on the faces of the other two clones also changed drastically upon seeing what Han Li was doing in the image. Han Li suddenly opened his massive beak to expel a shimmering golden ball of lightning, which swelled to around 10 feet in size in a flash. The ball of lightning then shot forth, directly toward the three clones as a dazzling bolt of lightning. A loud thunderclap rang out, and the crystalline screen was pulverized into powder amid a crisp crack by the golden lightning. He really did discover the all-encompassing plate. If we can't ambush him, then we'll just have to forcibly stop him, sacred ancestor Zhu Guang said in a cold voice. The other two clones naturally offered no objections, and both of them began to make hand seals while uttering incantations. At the same time, the ball of lightning transformed into a giant net that swept forward, and a white object appeared out of thin air. This was a circular object that was over 1,000 feet in size, and it resembled a massive jade plate. Under the illumination of the white light emanating from the jade plate, a formation that was around 500 meters in size also emerged. If Han Li hadn't stopped right as he did, he would have plunged headfirst into that restriction, and that was naturally quite an alarming realization for him. The giant jade plate revolved on the spot, then released a dense white light barrier. After just a few flashes, the light barrier transformed into a wall of light with no end in sight to completely cut off Han Li. However, a burst of exuberant light suddenly flashed from Han Li's body, and he transformed into another giant bird form that resembled the legendary true spirit heavenly phoenix. This was none other than the heavenly phoenix transformation of Han Li's 12 awakening transformations. As soon as this bird emerged, it let loose a clear cry before flapping its wings, and spatial fluctuations erupted up ahead, following which a white spatial rift emerged. Han Li's giant bird body flashed forward, and he instantly vanished into the rift. In the next instant, an identical rift appeared beyond the white light barrier, and Han Li re-emerged in a wraith-like manner before immediately adopting his cunning form again. He flapped his four wings, and a resounding thunderclap rang out as he disappeared on the spot. Several thousand feet away, another thunderclap rang out, and Han Li reappeared before continuing to fly away as an azure and white thread of light. This process sounded like quite a lengthy and convoluted one, but it had actually only taken an instant, and before the three clones knew it, Han Li was fleeing into the distance again. The three clones were naturally completely flabbergasted upon seeing this. That's impossible. How was he able to teleport away so easily in the face of the restriction from the all-encompassing plate? Could it be that he's carrying some type of treasure that can counter the all-encompassing plate? One of the clones roared in a furious manner. No, it was because of his transformation. Don't forget that the all-encompassing plate is unable to restrict spirit birds with innate spatial abilities such as phoenixes. What that brat just unleashed was clearly some type of heavenly phoenix transformation technique. Sacred Ancestor Zhu Guang analyzed in a calm voice. Just how many transformations does this brat have? Even with Yuan Cha's assistance, it won't be an easy task to capture him, the final clone said with a dark expression. Right at this moment, white light flashed from the distance, and a majestic stone hall appeared before hurtling directly toward the three clones. Let's set all that aside and give chase first, Sacred Ancestor Zhu Guang said without any hesitation. Indeed, we can't let him get away again, otherwise we may not get a chance to capture him again. The other two clones also nodded in agreement. Thus, crimson light flashed from their bodies, and they instantly combined as one before injecting their power into the giant jade plate in a frenzy. A faint buzzing sound rang out from the jade plate, and runes swirled over its surface before it shot forth as a ball of white light. Close to 10 kilometers away, Yuan Cha was appraising everything that was unfolding while seated in her stone chair with a dark expression. What useless idiots! I can't believe those three clones couldn't stop that hand brat even after setting up an ambush. It appears I'll have to do everything myself, Yuan Chua grumbled to herself. Meanwhile, Han Li was also internally lamenting his current situation. Even though the enemies within the jade plate hadn't revealed themselves, he was able to identify who they were from the faint crimson light that had appeared when the treasure had been activated. Now that he was being pursued by two sacred ancestors at once, Han Li had naturally completely cast aside all thoughts of turning around and facing his pursuers in battle, and was focused wholeheartedly on fleeing. 2 days later, Han Li found himself surrounded by several tens of mid-grade devilish beings. These devilish beings were expelling devilish chi out of their mouths and swinging their weapons through the air, unleashing barrages of attacks toward Han Li with all their might. However, Han Li merely released a layer of golden lightning arcs out of his body, and all of the devilish beings were reduced to dust amid a resounding thunderclap. After that, he immediately continued on his way, not daring to delay even for an instant. A short while later, the jade plate and stone hall also rapidly passed through this place. 5 days later, over 100 devilish beings and over 1,000 low-grade devilish beasts appeared before Han Li. On this occasion, Han Li plunged headfirst into the horde of beasts, and streaks of azure sword chi erupted out of his body in a frenzy. All of the low-grade devilish beasts and devilish beings were instantly destroyed, while Han Li continued to flee rapidly into the distance. At this point, the jade plate and stone hall were already close to 1,000 kilometers away. 10 days later, in the air above a murky gray mountain range, a giant golden ape that was over 1,000 feet tall rushed into an army comprised of hundreds of elite devilish beings and a dozen or so giant devilish beasts. The giant ape swung its massive arms violently through the air, and none of the devilish beings or giant devilish beasts were able to withstand even a single attack. However, they seemed to have received some kind of strict order. Even though their numbers were quickly dwindling, they were still throwing themselves at the giant ape with no regard for their own lives. A buzzing sound rang out from another direction, and two balls of white light emerged almost in unison before hurtling toward the battlefield. The giant golden ape let loose a roar of fury before unleashing a burst of golden sound waves that made the nearby space twist and warp violently. In the blink of an eye, all of the devilish beings swept up by the golden sound waves self-detonated on the spot, following which the giant ape transformed into a four-winged cunning again before flying away. Half a month later, Han Li had reverted back to his human form, and he was situated on the lakebed of an unknown lake, appraising the two devilish lords before him with a grim expression. One of the devilish lords had an inky black head, webbed hands, and several thick tentacles beneath its armpits that were waving incessantly. As for the other devilish lord, it had a pair of eyes that were as bright as lamps and a layer of shimmering azure scales all over its body. Han Li took a deep breath before making a grabbing motion with both hands, summoning an azure and a black mountain before sending both of them hurtling directly toward the two devilish lords. In the air above the lake close to 10,000 kilometers away, the Jade Plate and Stone Hall were hurtling toward Han Li's location one after the other. 2 months later, the four-winged Kun Peng was being harassed by a dozen or so shimmering crimson devilish beings above a peculiar steaming swamp. Regardless of whether the giant Kun Peng unleashed bolts of silver lightning or lashed out with its talons, the crimson devilish beings were able to instantly regenerate before pouncing toward the giant bird again. High up in the air around 1,000 kilometers away, the Jade Plate and Stone Hall reappeared. Han Li could naturally sense that his pursuers were closing in once again, and he immediately released countless golden flowers from his giant bird body. Each flower was around the size of a bowl, and they each contained a shimmering golden beetle. These were none other than the mature gold-devouring beetles that Han Li had kept in reserve, and he had released several thousand of them at once. Even with their instantaneous regenerative abilities, the crimson devilish beings were still completely devoured by the gold-devouring beetles within the span of just a few breaths, leaving behind no trace of their existence. Han Li let loose a long cry, and all of the beetles flew back toward him. Immediately thereafter, he flapped his four wings and vanished on the spot as a silver arc of lightning. After a few more rumbling thunderclaps, the silver arc of lightning flashed a few times before completely vanishing into the distance. Around 10 minutes later, the Jade Plate and Stone Hall both arrived on the scene before stopping in midair. A humanoid figure then emerged above each treasure. One of them was a slender and elegant woman, while the other was a crimson-robed young man. They were none other than the clones of Xianxia and Zhu Guang. Xianxia was completely expressionless, but the fury in her eyes was plain to see, while Zhu Guang wore an expression of unbridled rage. I didn't think that even my bloodlight crystal guards wouldn't be able to stall him at all. It looks like he's intent on dragging out this chase. Zhu Guang spat through gritted teeth. HMPH, aren't those guards of yours supposed to be indestructible? How were they killed by those mere spirit insects? Xianxia harumphed coldly in response. Don't tell me you didn't identify what those spirit insects were. My guards have indeed cultivated the blood-buddy devilish art, but there's no way they could withstand the power of those spirit insects, Zhu Guang snapped. Of course I was able to identify those spirit insects. Perhaps I would be wary of them if there were over 100,000 of those gold-devouring beetles, but such a trifling number won't be anywhere near enough to pose a threat to you and me. We can just trap them using a wood or stone attribute treasure, Xianxia said in an indifferent manner. I do indeed have a pair of treasures of those attributes, but can you be certain that he only has that many of those spirit insects? What if he has more than 100,000 of them up his sleeve? On top of that, we still don't know how many trump cards he's yet to reveal. What if we back him into a corner and he lashes out to deal us severe damage before we take him down? Zhu Guang speculated. You think he has over 10,000 gold-devouring beetles? You sure have a vivid imagination. All right, let's say that he does indeed have that many gold-devouring beetles up his sleeve. Do you think his spiritual sense will be powerful enough to control them? Even if our true bodies were present, controlling over 100,000 gold-devouring beetles would instantly exhaust our spiritual sense. Rest assured, controlling several thousand of those beetles at once is most likely already his limit. If he really could control so many of those beetles at once, he would have used them against us already. He does indeed possess some powerful abilities that we need to be wary of, but don't tell me that you're planning to give up now. If so, then I'll just have to continue on my own. You just have to deploy your subordinates to cut off all of the potential routes he can take to return to any major human settlements. Xianxia chuckled coldly. Sacred Ancestor Zhu Guang's expression changed slightly before he replied. I was only considering the worst-case scenario. Seeing as you're so confident, I'll naturally be willing to continue as well. Han Li had taken two extremely important treasures from him, so he naturally wasn't willing to give up on this chase. As you know, I'm the leader of our holy race army in this area, but I can't deploy all of the troops here to hunt down that human brat. Otherwise, if something were to go wrong, I would be held accountable, Zhu Guang suddenly said. So what are you trying to say? Spit it out, Xianxia urged in an impatient manner. What I'm saying is that seeing as we're unable to capture this human cultivator in a short time, you and I have to make some long-term plans. Why don't you request some reinforcements from Liu Jai? If she can deploy some of her elite subordinates to assist us, there's no way that human brat will be able to get away. With your relationship with Liu Jai, I'm sure this won't be too difficult, Zhu Guang chuckled. Yuan Cha considered this proposal for a moment before nodding in agreement. Request reinforcements from Liu Jai. That's not a bad idea. All right, I can do that, but during this time, you and your subordinates have to keep up the pressure on that hand brat. Don't allow him any respite, and certainly don't let him get away. Rest assured, fellow Taoist Yuan Cha, I'll be sure to cut off all of the potential routes leading to Deep Heaven City and the other major human settlements. I'll ensure that he'll have no one to turn to, Zhu Guang assured in an ecstatic manner. That would be best. Prior to the arrival of Liu Jai's reinforcements, we should continue to follow him from a distance. Once we completely exhaust him, we'll be able to capture him with ease, Yuan Cha said in a cold voice. Of course, in reality with our powers, if we were prepared to incur some costs, we would have most likely already chased him down, Zhu Guang said with a smile. All right, let's continue then. I have to admit that his speed truly is quite remarkable. If we delay here any longer, he'll escape out of our sensory range, Yuan Cha said as she cast her gaze into the distance. Of course, I've already set up 7 more groups of my subordinates up ahead, and they should be able to exhaust him even further, Zhu Guang replied with a cold smile. Yuan Cha offered no response to this, and merely returned to her stone hall as a ball of white light. As for Zhu Guang, he made a hand seal and vanished into the jade plate as a cloud of black qi. In the next instant, both of the giant treasures set off in pursuit of Han Li once again. Meanwhile, Han Li was around 10,000 kilometers away, flying through the air with a dark expression. Having been fleeing for the past 2 months, the plans of the 2 sacred ancestors had naturally been made very apparent to him. During this period of time, he had encountered at least 30 to 40 groups of enemies. Some of these groups were comprised only of low-grade devilish beings, while others included the most elite forces the devilish army had to offer, and there were even 2 groups that had devilish lords among their ranks. Under normal circumstances, this naturally wouldn't be of any concern to him, but with the 2 sacred ancestors hot on his heels, he didn't dare to engage in prolonged battles. As such, he was forced to unleash powerful abilities to eradicate his enemies as quickly as possible, but doing so was naturally very taxing on his magic power and spiritual sense. If it weren't for the fact that he had many regenerative pills up his sleeve, he would have already collapsed. Even so, he was still in terrible condition. Following the intense battles that he had endured, his magic power reserves had been whittled down to less than half, and after being forced to release all those mature gold-devouring beetles, his spiritual sense had also been severely depleted. The only silver lining on this situation was that the 2 sacred ancestors seemed to have been intimidated by the powers he had displayed, and they only dared to deploy their troops to try and stall him. As such, he didn't have to worry about being attacked by the 2 sacred ancestors for now, but he clearly couldn't keep this up for much longer. If they were to discover that he was virtually a spent force, or if they were to deploy a large number of devilish beings to surround him, then he would be as good as dead. Han Li naturally wasn't going to wait for something like this to happen. He had employed all types of methods to try and shake off his pursuers, but the 2 sacred ancestors were just as if not more adept than he was in tracking and concealment abilities. He had tried a wide variety of tactics, but at the very most, he had only been able to shake off the 2 sacred ancestors for less than half a day before they caught up again. Thus, Han Li was in a very dire situation. If there were only a single sacred ancestor pursuing him, then perhaps he could slip away by taking advantage of a moment of complacency or a lapse in concentration from his pursuer. However, with 2 of them complementing one another, there was no way he would be able to depend on something like that. As he approached Deep Heaven City, the number of enemies that he encountered was clearly beginning to increase. He couldn't allow this to continue any longer. His pursuers were clearly taking advantage of his intention to return to Deep Heaven City, and had most likely set up a vast devilish army to stop him along the way. If he were to forge ahead blindly, then he'd run out of magic power and be killed before he could reach Deep Heaven City. He had to escape toward another direction. There were definitely going to be devilish beings attempting to impede him in other directions as well, but the resistance he encountered would most likely be significantly diminished. However, he couldn't make his intentions too obvious. He had to somehow shake off his pursuers for now and give himself an opening for some respite. Having made up his mind, Han Li immediately began to think of a plan. Perhaps the dire nature of the situation bestowed upon Han Li a greater sense of urgency, but he was quickly able to think of a plan. Within the Jade Plate, the three Zhu Guang clones were standing in front of a new crystalline wall in a stationary manner. Two of the clones had already closed their eyes, seemingly to rest, while the third was staring intently at the image on the wall. All of a sudden, a faint cry of surprise escaped from the third clone's mouth, and the other two clones immediately opened their eyes. The image on the crystalline wall depicted Han Li in his Kun Peng form, and he suddenly reverted back into human form, then stopped before making a hand seal. His body blurred slightly, and he manifested 8 identical figures to himself. The Han Lis then all fled toward different directions at once. HMPH, does he think that such a pitiful little trick will work on me? One of the clones harumphed coldly before making a hand seal, and a giant devilish projection appeared behind him amid a flash of gray light. The devilish projection had a pair of horns on its head and several massive tentacles on its back. It let loose a menacing snarl before a giant vertical eye suddenly appeared on its chest amid a flash of crimson light. The eye took up close to half of the entire area of its chest, and it was glowing with green light, presenting a harrowing sight to behold. The clone let loose a loud cry, and a burst of green light erupted from the giant eye before vanishing into the crystalline wall in a flash. In the next instant, the clone closed his eyes, and azure light began to flash incessantly over his face. After a short while, he said in a confident voice, "There are 2 actual bodies and 6 projections. One of them must be a clone, and it's traveling in a different direction from his true body. Looks like he's realized our intentions and is trying to shake us off again. Speed up, don't let him get away," another clone said in a cold voice. Of course, however, just as the other clone was about to say something further, spiritual light suddenly flashed from the crystalline screen, and the image changed into one of Yuan Cha sitting on her stone chair. "There are 2 actual bodies. We'll take one each. If either of us find his true body, then notify the other right away," Yuan Cha instructed as soon as her image appeared. "All right, we'll do as you say," one of the Zhu Guang clones immediately agreed. Yuan Cha nodded before sweeping a sleeve through the air, and the image on the crystalline wall instantly faded. Almost at the exact same moment, countless runes surged out of the stone hall in a frenzy before forming a giant teleportation formation down below. The stone hall rotated at the center of the formation before disappearing in a flash. "Let's go," one of the Zhu Guang clones said. The 3 clones then made hand seals in unison, and bright crimson light radiated from their bodies. In the next instant, the giant Jade Plate released a burst of dazzling white light, and its speed increased by more than 2-fold. Meanwhile, the Han Lis all fled in different directions, vanishing into the distance in a flash. Several 100,000 kilometers away, there was an army of over 1,000 elite devilish beings hiding in preparation for an ambush. Moments later, the army received an order, and they immediately split up into the 2 before rushing away in 2 different directions. As for the place that Han Li was situated at mere moments ago, none of the devilish beings took any further interest in it. Round 10 minutes later, a ball of purple light suddenly flashed from behind a mundane-looking azure rock on the ground below, and a silver humanoid figure abruptly emerged. It was another Han Li. This Han Li was giving off no aura whatsoever, and as soon as he appeared, he closed his eyes before releasing his spiritual sense. After verifying that there weren't any devilish lords in a radius of several thousand kilometers, a hint of elation appeared on his face. He immediately flipped a hand over to produce a thin skin-like object, which he tossed onto his own body. In the blink of an eye, he had transformed into a nondescript giant gray wolf, and he shot forth directly toward Deep Heaven City again as a streak of faint gray light. Meanwhile, another Han Li was flying through the air over a lush forest as a streak of azure light. The stone hall was hot on his heels in pursuit, only around several kilometers away. A massive mountain that was over 100,000 feet tall suddenly appeared in Han Li's field of view. The mountain was extremely lush and scenic, and Han Li's eyes immediately lit up as he flew directly toward the mountain. After just a few flashes, he abruptly vanished at a certain point halfway up the mountain. Not long thereafter, the stone hall appeared above the mountain summit. then released countless runes of different colors to instantly manifest a giant five-colored light formation. The formation expelled a faint buzzing sound as soon as it appeared, and a giant ball of five-colored light with a diameter of several hundred feet appeared at its center. A cold harumph rang out from within the stone palace, and the giant ball of light immediately detached itself from the light formation before descending toward the highest point on the mountain peak. Five-colored spiritual light flashed violently, and in the instant the ball of light came into contact with the mountain summit, it disappeared into the mountain without a sound, leaving only a gigantic black hole on the ground. Not only was the hole extremely massive with a radius of over 1,000 feet, its edge was completely black and remarkably smooth, and a scorching aura was emanating from within it. After the span of just a few breaths, an earth-shattering boom erupted from deep within the belly of the mountain, and the earth tremored violently. Countless thick pillars of light then suddenly erupted from the surface of the mountain, punching countless holes into it in an instant. The mountain swayed violently for a moment before completely collapsing, crumbling into a massive pile of rubble with countless rocks and stones flying in all directions. At the center of the wreckage was a gargantuan crater that was several hundred feet deep, with an area of over 10 acres. The center of the crater was completely devoid of all matter, as if everything within it had been vaporized on the spot. Immediately thereafter, over 100 thick pillars of light erupted from the light formation up above, then pierced into the wreckage down below. A string of resounding booms rang out from underground, but there was nothing amiss. Only then did the stone hall gradually descend from above, only stopping once it was only several thousand feet above the rubble. White light flashed in the air above the stone hall, and Xianxia emerged with a slightly bewildered expression as she swept her gaze over the wreckage. That hand brat just escaped into this mountain, so there's no way he should have been able to escape the scope of my attack. However, it looks like that was only a clone of his, seeing as I was able to kill him so easily, but even if it's just a clone, it should have left behind some remains. Could it be that it just so happened to be at the epicenter of the attack, and its body was completely destroyed? Xianxia murmured to herself with furrowed brows. After a brief pause for contemplation, she closed her eyes while pointing a finger at her own glabella. A burst of enormous spiritual sense immediately erupted forth before spreading in all directions before scouring meticulously through every single inch of rubble, but all to no avail. Looks like I was overthinking things. Xianxia's expression eased slightly as she reopened her eyes. Right at this moment, a peculiar type of fluctuations emanated from her body, and her expression changed slightly as she swept a sleeve through the air to release an antiquated mirror. The mirror circled around in the air above her head before hovering in front of her, and moments later, the image of Zhu Guang appeared on its surface. Fellow Taoist Xianxia, there's no need for you to continue in your pursuit. You're most likely chasing after a clone. The one that I'm chasing has killed most of the troops I sent to impede him, and he's displaying immense power. I'm confident that this is his true body. I've managed to trap him in a certain place with my all-encompassing plate, but he's unleashed some type of concealment technique, and I'm unable to find him for now. The three of us need to focus on controlling the all-encompassing plate to seal off the surrounding area, so you'll have to assist us with tracking him down, the Zhu Guang clone said in a serious manner. The remnants of Xia's suspicions were erased upon hearing this, and she replied, I see, that confirms it then. I've already taken care of the one that I'm chasing after, and it did indeed seem far too weak to be the true body. I'll come to you right away. Make sure you don't allow him to escape. She then immediately stowed her mirror away, before flying upward as a streak of white light. After just a few flashes, she returned to her stone hall and departed from the scene. Thus, peace and quiet returned to the area. 4 hours later, a layer of green light suddenly flashed over a mundane-looking dead log situated in a certain corner of the rubble. The log suddenly transformed into a green-skinned young man who was identical to Han Li in appearance. It was none other than Han Li's spirit body. As soon the spirit body emerged, it immediately laid a hand onto the top of its own head, and a ball of green light emerged, within which was an adorable little girl. The little girl's face was slightly pale, and she took a seat with her legs crossed in the air above the spirit body. After a long while, a hint of color had finally returned to her cheeks. She cast her gaze toward the massive crater nearby with a hint of lingering fear in her eyes, and murmured to herself, Master was right. The spirit body really is able to conceal itself flawlessly within a natural setting. I've completed my mission. Now, it's time to hide somewhere, then find a way to reunite with Master later. I hope Master can survive this ordeal." After that, she disappeared into the spirit body again, as a ball of green light. In the next instant, the spirit body reopened its eyes, then decided on a certain direction before flying away. Elsewhere, there were over 100 devilish elites hovering in the air around a giant jade plate. They were situated above a valley, and were looking down below with solemn looks in their eyes. At this point, the giant jade plate had already transformed into a scintillating red sun, and the red spiritual light radiating from it had encompassed the entire valley down below. Within this red light, there were countless silver runes flashing incessantly, and they seemed to contain some type of mysterious power. Within the jade plate, the three Zhu Guang clones were standing next to one another. They were all making hand seals with crimson light shimmering around their bodies, staring at the crystalline wall up ahead with intense, unblinking eyes. Within the image on the crystalline wall, a series of crimson balls of light were scouring through the valley in search for something, and nothing was able to impede these balls of light. As the balls of light roamed over the landscape, the image on the crystalline wall was constantly changing. However, there was nothing to be seen aside from rocks, trees, and spirit beasts that possessed no intelligence. The three clones' expressions naturally darkened even further upon seeing this, and they continued to control the balls of light to search through the area. Not long after that, a ball of white light shot forth from the distance, and it was none other than Xianxia's stone hall. The stone hall reached the jade plate in a flash before stopping on the spot, and almost at the exact same moment, Xianxia emerged from the stone hall amid a flash of white light. "You finally arrived, fellow Taoist Xianxia," the Zhu Guang clone at the center said with a smile. "Cut the chit-chat. Are you sure that Han Brad has been trapped in the valley?" Xianxia asked. "Of course, I wouldn't dare to lie to you about something like this. After I caught up to him, he tried to use an earth movement technique to get away, so I sealed off this entire area with my all-encompassing plate. There's no way he can escape from here, but he's used some type of concealment technique that's managed to escape my detection, so I'll have to trouble you, fellow Taoist," another Zhu Guang clone replied. "All right, I'll unleash my great origin devil technique right away to force him out into the open," Xianxia said with a nod. "Please allow one of us to enter the valley with you to protect you against potential sneak attacks while you unleash your ability," the final Zhu Guang clone said in a cold voice. "Protect me? HMPH, it sounds like you just want to keep an eye on me." Xianxia's expression darkened upon hearing this. You're misconstruing my intentions, fellow Taoist Xianxia. That human brat is full of tricks, and he's carrying several powerful treasures that could potentially be very dangerous." The Zhu Guang clone in the middle chuckled in response. "Do whatever you want then. I won't stop you from sending someone to accompany me, but you'd better not try anything. Otherwise, if something goes wrong, don't blame me for turning on you," Xianxia said in an expressionless manner. Immediately thereafter, she returned to her stone hall without waiting for a response from Zhu Guang. The smile on the face of the middle Zhu Guang clone immediately faded, and he said to another clone, "All right, just as we planned earlier, you go and keep an eye on her. If she tracks down that brat, notify us right away. We can't allow her to get her hands on him first. Rest assured, I'll be sure to keep a close eye on her. That brat is most likely a spent force by now, but Xianxia still definitely won't be able to capture him easily. Before he appears, make sure to maintain the all-encompassing plate restriction so he doesn't get away again," the clone replied. The other two clones naturally gave an affirmative response. Meanwhile, a rumbling boom suddenly rang out from the stone hall, and countless runes flashed from its surface as it split up into the two stone giants. Xianxia was standing atop the head of one of the giants, and she made a hand seal, upon which the two stone giants descended toward the center of the valley. At the same time, a ball of crimson light emerged from the jade plate before also flying downward. Moments later, both Xianxia and one of the Zhu Guang clones had landed on a patch of flat ground within the valley. Yuanchu inspected her surroundings before issuing an instruction to the two stone giants. "Elders, begin your transformation." "Yes, Mistress Xianxia," the two stone giants immediately replied. Bright gray light erupted from their bodies, and they instantly transformed into a pair of stone pillars, each of which was over 1,000 feet tall. There was a series of strange patterns and runes engraved on the surfaces of the two pillars, creating quite a mysterious sight to behold. "Shilan totems, I'm very impressed that these two subordinates of yours managed to cultivate such an ability," the Zhu Guang clone said in an intrigued voice. These two are definitely among the top 10, if not the top 3 most powerful beings in the Stone Devil race. If they can't even do something like this, then why would I have protected them in our holy realm for so many years? Yuan Cha replied in a cold voice. If the Stone Devils under my command were this powerful, I'd also do everything in my power to protect them. All right, setting that aside for now, have you summoned these totems to enhance the power of your Great Origin Devil technique? The Zhu Guang clone asked. Even your all-encompassing plate was unable to track down that hand brat, so just using the Great Origin Devil technique may not be enough, either. However, with the Shilin totems to assist me, I'll be able to find him for sure, Yuan Cha confirmed. The Zhu Guang clone nodded in response before falling silent. Yuan Cha also had no intention of speaking any further, and her body swayed before she appeared in between the two stone pillars. White light flashed, and an antiquated stone platform rose up from the ground, carrying her over 100 feet up into the air. She took a deep breath before making a hand seal, then swept her other sleeve through the air to release a dozen or so small black flags, all of which took root firmly on the ground near the stone platform. She then let loose a delicate cry, and a streak of black light emerged from her back before transforming into a giant devilish projection with 3 heads and 6 arms. The projection wore a suit of glossy black armor, and its entire body was giving off an overwhelming baleful aura. Its 6 eyes were bright red and completely devoid of emotion. Yuan Cha began to chant in a low voice before casting around a dozen incantation seals into her surroundings, all of which vanished into thin air in a flash. The small black flags immediately released a buzzing sound in response, and they quickly swelled to over 100 feet tall amid a flash of black light. Right at this moment, the giant devilish projection behind Yuan Cha suddenly raised its heads before making a grabbing motion upward with all 6 of its hands. 6 black balls of light emerged over its palms, then transformed into 6 plumes of black smoke that converged high up in the air. A devilish cloud instantly took shape up above, then began to take on the forms of different living creatures, as if it possessed spiritual nature. Yuan Cha's chanting ceased upon seeing this, and she pointed a finger up toward the huge flags. Black light swirled over the surfaces of the flags, then transformed into around a dozen bursts of black chi that rose up into the devilish cloud. As a result, the cloud swelled drastically in size, and soon it had encompassed virtually half of the entire valley. Cold light flashed through Yuan Cha's eyes, and she abruptly opened her mouth before expelling several balls of blood essence toward the devilish cloud up above. The blood essence transformed into droplets of blood rain that vanished into the cloud in a flash, and at the same time, the 2 stone pillars were also releasing halos of 5-colored light. Letter 1D4BB, letter 1D633, letter 212F, letter 212F, letter 1D464, letter 212F, letter 1D4B7, letter 1D450, letter 2134, letter 1D455A. With each halo that passed through the devilish cloud, the cloud would swell slightly in size, and not long after that, countless crimson threads emerged within it amid a flash of crimson light. They intertwined with the black cloud and manifested countless fist-sized balls of black chi, all of which then transformed into palm-sized black crows. There were over 10,000 of these crows in total, creating a harrowing sight to behold. Go, Yuan Cha instructed as she swept a sleeve through the air. The crows circled around before flying toward a certain direction in the valley, while Yuan Cha closed her eyes before pressing a finger against her own glabella, seemingly sensing something in silence. The Zhu Guang clone's expression changed slightly at the sight of the massive murder of crows, but he didn't do anything. The crows seemed to possess insubstantial bodies as they were able to pass through all physical obstacles in their way, and mere moments later, they had scoured through close to half of the entire valley, but still hadn't been able to discover anything. Just as the crows were summoned back by Yuan Cha before being sent toward a different direction, a sharp ringing sound suddenly erupted, and the Zhu Guang clone faltered slightly before hurriedly laying a hand onto his own waist. An egg-sized crystal ball instantly shot forth before transforming into a translucent light screen, within which the other 2 Zhu Guang clones could be seen. You've got bad news. Come back with fellow Taoist Yuan Cha right away. Another Han Li has suddenly been sighted elsewhere, and he broke through several of our defensive lines, killing 2 devilish lords en route to Deep Heaven City. That Han Li used an incomplete profound heavenly treasure and released a swarm of gold-devouring beetles, so he's almost definitely the true body. We've all been had. We're currently pursuing just another clone of his. I've already issued an order to stall him at all costs. If we hurry over now, we should still be able to catch him," one of the two Zhu Guang clones said in an urgent manner. The Zhu Guang clone's expression darkened significantly upon hearing this, and he hurriedly turned to Yuan Cha. "Did you hear that, fellow Taoist Yuan Cha? Forget about this clone. We have to leave this place right away." Yuan Cha's eyelids fluttered, and she suddenly reopened her eyes, revealing them to be flashing with green light. "HMPH, how can you be sure that you haven't gotten the wrong target again? I've already gone through this much hassle and I'm on the brink of success. Even if this isn't his true body, it'll still be useful for me to capture it. If you can't wait, then you can go on ahead. After I capture this clone, I'll meet up with you," she said in a cold voice. The Zhu Guang clone was rather taken aback to hear this, and after a brief moment of contemplation he said, "In that case, I'll be going on ahead. With your powers, I'm sure you'll have no issues capturing a mere clone. However, his true body is very troublesome to deal with, and you and I will have to join forces to take him down, so don't get any other ideas. Rest assured, I won't intentionally ruin something that's mutually beneficial to us. I'm pursuing this clone for my own purpose. As for what that is, perhaps you'll learn of it soon," Yuan Cha replied in a nonchalant manner. The Zhu Guang clone was still rather befuddled, but it wasn't appropriate for him to pry any further, so he could only set the matter aside for now. "I'll be leaving behind half of my subordinates for you to use as you see fit. There aren't that many of them, but I'm sure they'll be of some help to you." "Thank you for that," Yuan Cha replied with a nod as her expression eased slightly. Immediately thereafter, the Zhu Guang clone rose up into the air as a streak of crimson light, then disappeared into the jade plate after just a few flashes. Moments later, a film of crimson light appeared over the surface of the jade plate, and it abruptly vanished on the spot. Half of the elite devilish beings gathered around the jade plate also disappeared, leaving over 100 devilish beings behind. They were led by a late spatial tempering stage devilish being, and they all descended toward Yuan Cha. The leader of the devilish beings strode forward before extending a deep bow. "Mistress Yuan Cha, Master Zhu Guang has already departed. Do you have any orders for us?" Even though he was a subordinate to Zhu Guang, this devilish being was acting in an extremely respectful manner toward Yuan Cha. "No, just stand by for now," Yuan Cha instructed in an indifferent manner. "Yes, mistress." The devilish being naturally accepted the order without any objections. Thus, the devilish beings all scattered around the stone platform to await further instructions. As for Yuan Cha, she slowly closed her eyes again, and not long after that, the murder of crows scoured completed their search through another corner of the valley, then continued on toward another area. Not long after that, they finally discovered something. Just as the crows were flying over a short shrub, over 100 of them suddenly began to circle around the plant while squawking loudly. Yuan Cha abruptly reopened her eyes, and an elated look appeared on her face as she shot forth toward the shrub as a streak of white light. At her speed, it would only take a few flashes for her to reach her destination, and right at this moment, the space around the shrub warped slightly. Immediately thereafter, a burst of faint black chi emerged before flying away, but it was clearly already too late. Yuan Cha pointed a finger toward the black shadow, and all of the nearby crows immediately began to squawk in an extremely unpleasant manner, while flying toward the black shadow like moths to a flame. Perhaps one or two of these crows wouldn't be of any concern, but with over 1,000 of them swooping down at once, the black shadow was forced to stop and reveal its original form. This was an inky black nascent soul with an identical appearance to Han Li, and its entire body was radiating dense devilish chi. This was none other than Han Li's second nascent soul. This second nascent soul wasn't as powerful as Han Li's main nascent soul, but following that ordeal in the vast glacial realm, it had reached the peak of the spatial tempering stage, and it possessed immensely powerful devil Dao cultivation arts. Even though it had been forced to stop by the oncoming murder of crows, it didn't panic in the slightest as it rubbed its hand together before raising both of them in unison. Fierce black winds were swept up, and two bursts of inky black devilish chi erupted from within, transforming into a pair of black pythons that pounced straight into the murder of crows. The two pythons surged through the air, and all of the crows in their path were instantly destroyed. Even though the pair of pythons had gained the upper hand, the second nascent soul showed no signs of stopping as it quickly made a few more hand seals. Right at this moment, spiritual light flashed up above, and Xianxia emerged before immediately reaching down with one of her slender hands before making a grabbing motion. A resounding boom rang out as a giant white hand appeared out of thin air, then spread its fingers before pressing downward. With her enormous powers, if the hand were allowed to descend, there was no way that the second nascent soul would be able to escape. Thankfully, it was already prepared for this scenario and had a life-saving ability up its sleeve. All of a sudden, the nascent soul exploded, and a dozen or so inky black fireballs shot forth. Each fireball was around the size of an egg, and they instantly transformed into an inky black nascent soul each before appearing several 100 feet away. You still think you can get away? Xianxia raised her eyebrows and let loose a delicate cry before uttering a peculiar incantation. All of a sudden, a layer of translucent light appeared over the giant white hand, and it instantly exploded into a massive ball of white light. Countless streaks of crystalline light shot forth from the ball of light, encompassing an area over 1,000 feet in size, as well as all of the black nascent souls. Just as the nascent souls were about to unleash movement techniques to flee the scene, the streaks of crystalline light pierced through their bodies, and all of them exploded into balls of black flames aside from a single nascent soul, which twisted around to evade the oncoming attacks. The only remaining nascent soul was the real one, and its expression changed slightly upon seeing its illusionary technique being broken. Immediately thereafter, it expelled several balls of blood essence out of its mouth, then made a hand seal before chanting something. The blood essence dispersed into a cloud of blood mist, which completely inundated its body. HMPH, what trick are you trying now? Xianxia harumphed coldly as she swept a sleeve toward the cloud of blood mist. A piece of black fabric shot forth out of her sleeve in a flash, then instantly sliced through the blood mist like a projection. Letter 1D5F3, letter 1D69B, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D556, letter 1D6A0, letter 1D6AT, letter 1D6AC, letter 1D698, letter 1D46. However, almost at the exact same moment, a streak of crimson light also emerged from the blood mist before flying away into the distance. In the next instant, crimson light flashed in the distant sky as a crimson thread appeared, then blurred before vanishing again. Xianxia faltered slightly upon seeing this before a frosty look reappeared on her face. That's the bloodshadow evasion technique. That is indeed rather troublesome to deal with, but that won't be enough for you to escape from me. She waved a hand toward the distance, and the two giant stone pillars tremored slightly before rising up into the air. They then combined as one to form the stone hall again, before hurtling directly toward Xianxia. Xianxia flew into the stone hall before issuing an instruction to the devilish beings down below, then flew away as a ball of white light. The devilish beings down below naturally hurriedly followed along, and thus, the area was vacated in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, in the air above a lake that was countless kilometers away from the second nascent soul, Han Li had unleashed his sword art to create a giant azure dragon comprised of countless streaks of sword chi. The azure dragon was pouncing toward a high-grade devilish being with an insect-like body, and the devilish being was instantly torn apart. Even its nascent soul was instantly destroyed before it could escape. Han Li swept a sleeve through the air, and the azure dragon disintegrated into countless streaks of azure sword chi again. The sword chi revolved around in midair before hurtling back toward Han Li, then vanished into his body amid a flash of azure light. Beside the body of the high-grade devilish being that had just been slain, there were also a dozen or so other bodies of high-grade devilish beings hovering nearby. After stowing away all of the sword chi back into his own body, Han Li's face paled significantly, and only after circulating his magic power through his meridians a few times did his complexion improve slightly. Looks like they've already figured it out, so I can't keep going in this direction. What a pity. If they had reacted any slower than this, then there really was a chance that I could have made it back to Deep Heaven City. I can't allow myself to become predictable, so I'll have to try my luck by going in another direction. It's a good thing that my pursuers have already been shaken off, so there's a good chance that I'll be able to escape, Han Li mused to himself. Back when Han Li had unleashed that secret technique to conjure up projections of himself, Quirr and his second nascent soul had been among the projections, and they had lured away the two sacred ancestors. Meanwhile, he had concealed himself using his high zenith invisibility talisman and remained at the same location. With his drastic increase in cultivation base, it was impossible for the high zenith invisibility talisman to maintain its concealment effect for too long. If Xianxia and Zhu Guang had merely remained on the spot for a while, he would have been forced to reveal himself, and that was why he hadn't used his talisman earlier during his escape. He had already taken a huge risk to send out his spirit body and second nascent soul in a last-ditch effort, so he had naturally decided to use this talisman as well. As expected, Zhu Guang wasn't able to see through his deception in time, and he was able to shake off his pursuers. Not only was he taking a risk by doing this, his spirit body and second nascent soul were in even more peril than he was. Thankfully, the spirit body was formed by the immortal Xianxia, and Quer was also a spirit being of heaven and earth, so as long as they had enough time to conceal themselves, they should be able to remain hidden. As for his second nascent soul, he had given it his other high zenith invisibility talisman. On top of that, the second nascent soul had cultivated a devil Dao secret technique that allowed it to manifest wings with its devilish chi, and it had also cultivated the bloodshadow evasion technique. With those two techniques up its sleeve, it wasn't completely implausible that the second nascent soul could escape. After all, once the two sacred ancestors realized the second nascent soul wasn't his true body, they'd most likely just abandon it. This was why he had immediately exposed himself and began slaying devilish beings when he felt the timing to be about right. News of his exploits had most likely already reached Zhu Guang and Yuan Cha, and he didn't want to be pursued by them again, so he had no choice but to truly abandon Deep Heaven City and go elsewhere. With that in mind, Han Li no longer hesitated and fled in another direction. During the next 2 months, Han Li began to dart around all over the place in an extremely unpredictable manner. Initially, the Zhu Guang clones were unable to track him down, and could only react to reports from other devilish beings that had sighted Han Li. As such, they were always a step too late, and by the time they arrived, Han Li would already be gone. Strangely enough, Yuan Cha wasn't with them, and Han Li had no idea where she was. He was naturally more than happy to see this, and if it weren't for the fact that he was sorely lacking in magic power, he would have been very tempted to turn around and retaliate against the Zhu Guang clones. Unfortunately, under these current circumstances, he could only continue to run for his life. The 3 Zhu Guang clones were becoming more and more frustrated from this fruitless chase, and they dedicated even more devilish troops to hunting Han Li down, spreading them far and wide to try and intercept Han Li. On top of that, they were able to make use of the teleportation formations that the devilish army had already seized control of to aid in their pursuit of Han Li, and as a result, he was constantly kept on his toes. It was often the case that he would immediately depart from a place after recovering around 30% to 40% of his magic power, not daring to stay any longer than that. Even so, he was still almost cut off by the 3 Zhu Guang clones on several occasions. Thankfully, his intuition as a body integration cultivator saved on him those occasions, alerting him and allowing him to get away just in the nick of time. As such, Han Li was naturally becoming more and more cautious, and he was forced to abandon his plans of traveling to other major human settlements, including the Holy Sovereign City and the 4 True Spirit families, choosing to flee elsewhere instead. In the other directions, the number of devilish troops was drastically diminished, and the time it took for the 3 Zhu Guang clones to get to him began to increase. This gave Han Li a lot more respite, and he was able to meditate for longer periods of time, thereby allowing him to gradually recover his magic power. Unfortunately, this didn't last long. 3 months later, Yuan Cha suddenly reappeared alongside the 3 Zhu Guang clones, and they immediately set off after him in hot pursuit, not affording him any opportunity for respite. It was often the case that they would get to him when he had only been cultivating at a certain place for around 4 to 6 hours, and he would be forced to flee again. Thankfully, there weren't many other devilish beings nearby, so he was always able to make his escape relatively easily. However, during the next month, the 4 sacred ancestor clones were always hot on his heels no matter where he went, and he finally realized that something was wrong. The 4 sacred ancestor clones seemed to have a method of determining his approximate location. It clearly wasn't very accurate, but it was enough to render him unable to shake them off. Yuan Cha was clearly the one who held the key to this tracking method, and she had only just recently obtained it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to get away so easily in the past. Han Li employed a few more methods to try and shake off his pursuers, all to no avail, and his heart sank further and further. As such, he became even more cautious and began to take routes that would take him further and further away from the devilish beings in the area. Thus, time passed by one day after another, and they began to approach the border of the human territory. This area was very close to the primordial world, and ancient beasts were often able to force their way through the restrictions here, so no human cities had been established in the area. As such, this was also the most barren and desolate part of the human territory. Without any human settlements here, there obviously wouldn't be any devilish armies situated here either. With Han Li's incredible speed, there were very few high-grade devilish beasts that had been able to keep up with him and the 4 sacred ancestor clones, and the only ones that had been able to keep up were only able to do so as they had been drawn into Zhu Guang's giant jade plate. Han Li continued to hurtle through the air as a streak of light with a dark expression. With his current level of magic power, it was unwise to continue to maintain his Kun-Peng form, so he could only revert back to his human form. At this point, he had already been fleeing for over half a year, and his constant changes in direction made the 4 sacred ancestor clones unable to chase him down. But even with his resolute will, having to flee for his life for so long was taking a heavy mental toll on him. However, he was now even more determined to continue fleeing and engage his pursuers in a battle of attrition. There was no way that the 4 sacred ancestor clones could keep this up forever. They had to be expending just as much magic power as he was, and they also wouldn't have had much time to recover their magic power. High up in the air millions of kilometers away from Han Li, a stone hall and a giant plate were hurtling through the air. Within the jade plate, the 3 Zhu Guang clones were standing before the crystalline wall, discussing something with Xianxia, whose image was being depicted on the wall. So you're still unwilling to enter our all-encompassing plate, fellow Taoist Xianxia. You should be just as aware as I am how much magic power we're expending by separately controlling flying treasures like this. I descended into this realm in quite a hurry, so I'm not carrying many magic power regeneration pills. I managed to get some from my subordinates, but after flying for this long, those pills have almost all been used up as well. At this rate, there's no guarantee that we'll be able to outlast that human brat. We don't know how many regenerative pills he's carrying. Even now, he's still displaying no signs of magic power exhaustion. I'm sure you're not carrying many regenerative pills, either, right, fellow Taoist? In that case, it would be wise of us to fly in one treasure together so we can take turns resting, one of the Zhu Guang clones urged. I naturally have no objections to this, but why can't you 3 come to my stone hall? Why do you insist on making me enter your all-encompassing plate? Xianxia asked. HMPH, why ask a question you already know the answer to? The cultivation arts we're using contradict with the protective stone chi cultivated by the stone devil race. If we try to meditate and recover our magic power in your stone devil hall, the effect will be minimal. Hence, it's much better for you to come into our all-encompassing plate, Zhu Guang insisted. Is that so? I'm more concerned that you'll unleash the power of your all-encompassing plate on me if I were to enter it. You're renowned in our sacred realm for devouring the blood essence and magic power of others, so don't tell me that something like this is beneath you. Xianxia chuckled coldly, completely doing away with all semblance of pleasantries. You're overthinking things, fellow Taoist. Both of us only have our clones here. If I were to do that, your true body definitely wouldn't let me get away with it, Zhu Guang sighed in a resigned manner. I wouldn't be so sure about that. What you're saying makes some sense, but I'm still not willing to take the risk. Perhaps this clone of mine doesn't possess enough blood essence and magic power to tempt you, but if we take into consideration the chaotic yin-yang chi and devil sealing lock that's currently in the Han brat's possession, even I would be tempted to do something radical, Xianxia said as a mocking sneer appeared on her face. The 3 Zhu Guang clones' expressions changed slightly upon hearing this, and they glanced at another before one of them asked, Chaotic yin-yang chi and devil sealing lock. What are you talking about? Why play these childish little games, Zhu Guang? I saw that Han brat extracting chaotic yin-yang chi from the devil's sealing lock using the earthly hellish flames. I heard that there was a very good chance that the devil's sealing lock had fallen into your hands. It seems that the rumors were true. I don't know how you managed to lose the treasure to a human, but you sent your 3 clones into this realm for the chaotic yin-yang chi, right? Xianxia chuckled coldly in response. Seeing as you've already figured everything else, then I won't keep this from you any longer. What are you going to do? Are you going to inform Liu Jai and the others of this? Zhu Guang asked in a cold voice. Chaotic yin-yang chi is extremely important to sacred ancestors like us. I'm not going to let even more people know about it. My condition is very simple. I can give you the devil's sealing lock and half of the chaotic yin-yang chi, but you have to give me the remaining chaotic yin-yang chi, as well as all of the treasures that are being carried by that hand brat, Yuan Cha replied. You sure are asking for a lot. Setting aside everything else, that brat took my purple word cauldron as well. I have to recover that no matter what, Zhu Guang harumphed coldly. Yuan Cha was rather taken aback to hear this. The purple word cauldron was taken by him as well. That's rather surprising to hear. In that case, you can have the cauldron as well. All right, then it's settled. We've forged an alliance. Isn't it about time you showed me the tracking method you're using to pursue that brat? Zhu Guang asked. Even if you learned the method, you wouldn't be able to replicate it, Yuan Cha said in an indifferent voice. Hee, how will I know whether I can replicate it if you don't tell me? Zhu Guang chuckled. If you really want to know, then I'll tell you. Remember how I remained behind to deal with the clone of that human brat? Yuan Ka asked. Of course, you remained there for a few months and didn't mention it at all after meeting up with me. Could it be that this tracking method has something to do with that clone of his? Zhu Guang asked. Indeed, that clone is actually one of his nascent souls. Even though it's only at the late spatial tempering stage, it's cultivated several powerful life-saving abilities. Even after chasing it for so long, I was still unable to stop it from self-detonating and escaping as countless wisps of soul fragments. In the end, I was only able to capture one of the soul fragments, Yuan Cha said with a grim expression. What? A spatial tempering stage nascent soul managed to escape from you? Zhu Guang was quite stunned to hear this, and all three clones exchanged astonished glances. HMPH, like I said, the nascent soul had cultivated several powerful life-saving abilities and was also carrying a few profound talismans. I was too complacent and allowed it to get away. With that nascent soul's powers, as long as most of it manages to gather together again, it should be able to recover back to its original form. If I hadn't been in a hurry to meet back up with you, I would have definitely spent some more time and destroyed all of those soul fragments. However, even with this single soul fragment, I'm able to use my Great Origin Devil technique to track his location. I've already refined that soul fragment into my own body, so I'm able to sense his approximate location from afar. Unfortunately, I don't have a second soul fragment for you to replicate this tracking method. In any case, this tracking method has a huge margin for error and only points out an approximate direction, which is why that human brat is able to continue to evade us, Yuan Cha explained. A soul fragment is required. I have a similar secret technique, but it looks like I won't be able to replicate the tracking method after all. If I had known this in advance, I would have stayed with you for a few more days to help you capture that nascent soul. A regretful look appeared on Zhu Guang's face as he spoke. If you had done that, then perhaps that human brat would have gone away. Even a second nascent soul of his is so difficult to capture. I can only imagine how slippery he's going to be, Yuan Cha said with a shake of her head. HMPH, no matter how tricky he must be close to completely exhausting his magic power and spiritual sense after being pursued by us for so long. Without any power at his disposal, he won't be able to use any of his tricks, Zhu Guang harumphed coldly. I recall you said the exact same thing 2 months ago, but he's still as lively as ever. In contrast, we're the ones who are struggling to keep up, Yuan Cha said as a slightly self-derogatory look appeared on her face. A slightly awkward look appeared on Zhu Guang's face upon hearing this. That's only because neither of us expected him to be carrying so many magic power regeneration pills. We're unable to track down his exact location, so we can only keep chasing him like this. As soon as he exhausts all of his magic power, we'll be able to capture him with ease. Indeed, he's still traveling quite quickly now, but he's far slower than he was in the beginning. It looks like he truly is close to exhausting his magic power, Yuan Cha replied with a nod. This is why I'm inviting you into my all-encompassing plate. If we control this treasure together, we'll be able to maintain our current speed while significantly decreasing our magic power expenditure, Zhu Guang said in a hopeful manner. Don't mention that again. I won't take such an unnecessary risk. This Stone Devil Hall is formed by the 2 elders of the Stone Devil race. I conserve much more magic power using it than anyone else could, Yuan Cha rejected in a cold voice. In that case, I won't mention this again. I have some subordinates with me. They should be able to help me control the all-encompassing plate for brief periods of time, Zhu Guang said with a wry smile. Then it's settled. It seems like that human brat won't be able to last much longer, but I still think that you and I will need to make some preparations in advance. If he really does manage to last longer than we do or plans to engage us in a last-ditch battle before his magic power runs out, we have to be prepared, Yuan Cha said as she nodded with a cold look in her eyes. Rest assured, fellow Taoist Yuan Cha, I've naturally prepared some other measures. There's no way that human brat will be able to turn the tables on us, Zhu Guang said in a confident manner. I'm glad to hear that. In order to conserve magic power, I won't be contacting you unless the necessity arises. After that, Yuan Cha swept a sleeve through the air, and her image vanished from the crystalline wall amid a flash of white light. Thus, peace and quiet abruptly returned to the space within the all-encompassing plate. Letter 1D4 1F, letter 1D563, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D556, letter 1D568, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D5F0, letter 1D698, letter 1D46. The smile on the face of the center Zhu Guang clone instantly disappeared, and he pondered the situation for a moment before asking, "What do you two think of what Yuan Cha just said?" He was naturally raising the question to the other two clones. Even though the three clones stemmed from the same being, their personalities vastly differed as a result of the special soul-splitting secret technique, and they were more like three completely different people. There's not much to it. Yuan Cha definitely didn't tell the truth. Most devilish cultivation arts include abilities that allow one to track someone's main nascent soul through the use of a soul fragment. However, this method is only viable when the person being tracked possesses far inferior magic power to the one doing the tracking. Otherwise, if the target senses that something is amiss, they can use certain special methods to seal off their main nascent soul, and the tracking method would be rendered useless, one of the clones said with furrowed brows. On top of that, she agreed to return the devil's sealing lock and purple word cauldron to you so easily. I suspect that she has some type of ulterior motive. Those two treasures aren't true profound heavenly treasures, but they're still incomplete profound heavenly treasures. Why is she willing to give them up so easily? If she had tried to argue with us over ownership rights of one or both of the treasures, perhaps I'd have been convinced that she was being genuine. The other clone also chuckled coldly in response. All right, I think we can conclude that she's definitely hiding something and harboring some kind of ulterior motive, but our top priority for now is to capture that human brat. Also, from today onward, let's begin taking turns absorbing the true devilish crystals that we brought with us. Hee, I bet Yuan Cha would have never anticipated that we would bring so many true devilish crystals into this realm. With those crystals as a source of devilish chi replenishment, we can keep this up even for another year. When Yuan Cha is unable to keep up, we'll be able to adopt the dominant position and dictate how that Han brat's treasures are split among us, the center Zhu Guang clone said with a dark expression. The other two clones were also quite elated to hear this. Meanwhile, Yuan Cha was also seated on her stone chair in deep thought within her massive stone hall. After a while, a faint sigh suddenly rang out within the stone hall. The voice was very delightful to the ears, but it was also completely unfamiliar. It was the sigh of another woman. Yuan Cha faltered slightly upon hearing this before an ecstatic look appeared in her eyes. Liu Jai, you're finally awake. I am. It's all thanks to your willingness to lend me your physical body that I was able to descend into the spirit realm without being noticed by anyone else. The unfamiliar female voice chuckled. You fell into a deep slumber just as I was breaking into this realm, and you didn't wake up for several years. I was quite concerned, Yuan Cha said. This clone of yours possesses quite a powerful physical body, but it's still unable to contain two powerful souls at once. I could only temporarily seal away my consciousness to ensure that no harm came to your physical body. By the way, where is this place, and why have you expended so much of your magic power? Have you encountered some type of trouble? The unfamiliar woman asked. I'll tell you about everything later. For now, please return this soul fragment of yours to your physical body first, sister. This is the least powerful of your 6 clones, but it's still far more powerful than this clone of mine. Yuan Cha flicked her wrist as she spoke, and a ball of black light shot out of her sleeve before landing on the ground. The ball of black light then transformed into an inky black jade coffin that was around 10 feet in size, and there were wisps of black devilish chi emanating from the coffin, as well as layers of mysterious patterns engraved over its surface. There were also a dozen or so golden and silver restriction talismans plastered to the surface of the coffin to seal it tightly shut. Sure, seeing as I've already awakened, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to continue to stay in your body, the unfamiliar female voice replied. Immediately thereafter, a layer of black light appeared over Yuan Cha's face, following which a ball of green spiritual light emerged from her glabella. After just a single flash, The ball of light transformed into a miniature green humanoid figure that was only several inches tall. The miniature green figure's body was concealed within a layer of green light, making it impossible to glean its facial features. Right at this moment, Yuan Cha began to chant something before pointing a finger at the black coffin. All of the golden and silver talismans on the coffin were ignited at her behest and were quickly incinerated into nothingness. Immediately thereafter, the lid of the coffin rose up into the air, and dense devilish chi erupted forth, quickly filling the entire hall. The miniature green figure instantly vanished into the coffin as a ball of green light upon seeing this. A resounding boom rang out, and all of the devilish chi that had poured out of the coffin instantly swept back into it. Thus, all of the black chi permeating throughout the entire hall vanished in the blink of an eye. As a result, the patterns on the surface of the coffin began to radiate dazzling white light, creating an unsettling contrast with the inky black body of the coffin. However, the white light only flashed for the span of a few breaths before it immediately dimmed. Right at this moment, bursts of buzzing rang out from within the coffin, and hundreds of ancient silver runes shot forth before forming 6 massive shimmering silver projections up above. These were all projections of humanoid devilish beings of different physical descriptions. These silver projections only appeared for an instant before they also disintegrated into specks of silver light. In the next instant, a faint moan rang out from within the coffin, and an arm that was encased in black armor emerged. Immediately thereafter, a slender black-armored warrior slowly rose to her feet from within the coffin. Not only was this armored warrior wearing a suit of antiquated black armor, she was also wearing a menacing visor that concealed everything aside from her clear blue eyes. "Sister Liu Jai, how much of your power can you channel through this clone?" Yuan Cha asked with a concerned look in her eyes as soon as the armored warrior emerged. "It'll still be somewhat restricted in this realm, but I'll be able to channel around 20% of my power through it, which will be enough to handle all enemies below the Grand Ascension stage," the armored warrior replied. "I see, 20% of your power will indeed be enough to dominate the human race. You awakened at just the right time, sister. I've encountered a problem that I'll require your assistance with," Yuan Cha said as the concern in her eyes gave way to elation. "Oh, what's the issue? Hold on, you don't seem to be alone here. Who's in that all-encompassing plate? Could it be that Du Long descended into the spirit realm as well?" the armored warrior asked in a slightly surprised manner as she caught sight of the giant jade plate beside the stone hall. "No, it's Zhu Guang's clones who are currently using the treasure. We're currently pursuing a human cultivator who possesses the Devil's Sealing Lock, Purple Word Cauldron, and Chaotic Yin-Yang Qi," Yuan Cha revealed. A hint of surprise appeared in the armored warrior's eyes upon hearing this, but her voice remained quite calm as she said, "Devil's Sealing Lock and Chaotic Yin-Yang Qi. That's rather interesting. Give me a detailed recount of what happened." Yuan Cha nodded before explaining the situation. "So this is what happened. I originally descended into this realm at your behest to prevent a plot hatched by the humans that'll be of detriment to our holy race. However, during that process..." It took Yuan Cha around 10 minutes to finally tell the full story, following which a wry smile appeared on her face as she sighed. "Thus, we can only keep chasing that human brat like this. That Zhu Guang clearly isn't to be trusted. It's most likely the case that he'll turn on me once we chase down that human cultivator. It sounds like Zhu Guang has some other measures prepared. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to plot against you like this, considering how this clone of yours is far more powerful than those 3 clones of his. However, there's no need to be concerned. Now that I've awakened, I'm naturally not going to just stand by idly and watch. Chaotic Yin-Yang Qi is extremely useful for us sacred ancestors. It would be a pity if it were to fall into the hands of Zhu Guang. This clone of mine is carrying many devilish crystals, and they should be enough for you to replenish your magic power," the armored warrior said. "That would be great. With your assistance I'll have nothing to worry about," Yuan Cha replied in an elated manner. A month later, a giant mountain range that was enshrouded in a vast expanse of murky gray mist appeared ahead of Han Li. Not only was this mist extremely dense, it seemed to stretch indefinitely up into the heavens with no end in sight. Han Li was currently seated in a triangular azure flying carriage with his eyes closed, meditating while holding a top-grade spirit stone in each hand. As the flying carriage was approaching the mountain range, Han Li seemed to have sensed something, and he slowly opened his eyes. "I'm finally here. This should be the legendary end of the southern sky. as expected of a super formation that has protected the human race for so many years. If it weren't for the fact that the restriction has been severely weakened by the merging of the two realms, it would most likely be very difficult to pass through this place. Han Li murmured to himself before closing his eyes again. All the while, his flying carriage continued onward, plunging into the mist without any hesitation. Half a day later, the stone hall and giant jade plate also arrived at this place. Yuan Cha and Zhu Guang held a brief discussion before also entering the mist. Han Li had already been forced to such an extent that he was venturing into the perilous primordial world, so there was naturally no reason to give up on this chase. 3 months later, Han Li appeared in the air above a swamp. He swept a sleeve through the air to release countless streaks of azure sword chi, slicing a giant purple lion that had been trapped in a golden lightning net into countless pieces. He made a grabbing motion, and a ball of purple light flew out from the lion's dismembered corpse. The ball of light flew into his hand in a flash, revealing itself to be a translucent, egg-sized demon core. Han Li's face was rather pale, but a faint smile appeared on his face as he murmured to himself, "With the demon core of this late spatial tempering stage bright purple lion, I should be able to refine a batch of spirit conservation pills, which will replenish my magic power for some time to come." He was carrying a large supply of magic power regeneration pills, but he had been constantly consuming them during the past year, so his supply was naturally beginning to wear thin. The supply of spirit stones that he had also wouldn't be sufficient to recover his magic power, so he took a risk and sought out several high-grade ancient beasts, quickly slaying them using powerful techniques to obtain their demon cores. Using the demon cores and some other ingredients, he would be able to refine a batch of magic power regeneration pills in a short time. With the limited time that he had, he wouldn't be able to maximize the efficacy of these pills, but he couldn't afford to worry about these minor details at a time like this. This came as quite a relief to Han Li. As long as he could continue to hunt down ancient beasts and secure pill refinement ingredients, he should be able to outlast his pursuers. A day later, Zhu Guang and Yuan Cha also arrived at the swamp, and all four of them were appraising the remains of the bright purple lion with dark expressions. They had clearly already guessed Han Li's intentions. They couldn't think of a good way to counter this course of action, but they had come too far to turn back now, so they could only continue. Thankfully, both of them were carrying large supplies of devilish crystals, so they weren't concerned about running out of magic power for now. Thus, Han Li continued to flee while slaying ancient beasts to refine pills, and he led his pursuers deeper and deeper into the primordial world. During the periods of time that Han Li failed to encounter ancient beasts that he could slay for pill refinement ingredients, he would consume some of the spirit plants he obtained from the vast glacial realm. These spirit medicines each had different effects, but they all contained extremely pure spiritual qi. Direct consumption was quite a waste, but they still served to replenish some of his magic power. However, doing this resulted in a myriad of different medicinal effects accumulating within his body, which was quite harmful. Under normal circumstances, he could just spend some time to use his magic power to expel or refine these medicinal effects, but in this situation, he didn't have any time or magic power to spare. As such, he could only temporarily repress these medicinal effects and address them later. With Han Li's current level of powers, there naturally wouldn't be any issues in the short term, but if he had to continue to consume spirit medicines directly without properly addressing their medicinal effects, then he would land himself in hot water sooner or later. Han Li was well aware of this, but he had no choice but to continue in this fashion. Thus, another half a year passed by. On this day, Han Li was meditating on his flying carriage with his eyes closed, while a woman in a white dress was controlling the flying treasure in his stead. The woman was none other than his sentient puppet, Doll. Doll's magic power was far inferior to Han Li's, so the flying carriage was traveling at a far slower speed, but it was still better than having to stop whenever Han Li needed some time to rest and recuperate. This afforded Han Li some breathing room from time to time. Otherwise, even with his supply of pills and spirit stones, he wouldn't have been able to last this long. Even so, his complexion had clearly paled significantly compared to half a year ago, and his aura had also become extremely feeble. All of a sudden, his expression changed slightly, and he abruptly opened his eyes. Almost at the exact same moment, a loud thunderclap rang out several kilometers away, and a giant silver lightning formation emerged out of thin air. A burly figure then stumbled out of the center of the formation, amid a resounding boom.